Chapter 384, The Battle of Winterhold, 1. Cooking Madness, the day of the battle. Alina's front, Neo Sarthal. Daughter, what is that? Sigurd stood with a pale face beside Alina. The father and daughter pair were in a stone circular room at the base of the Tower of Music. What was in front of him was simply something that scared the ever-living out of him. That? It is a magicar reactor. That is one? Aren't those things just some small trinkets? Trinkets? Father, magicar reactors are the crown jewel of John's creations and Winterhold's core of power. They are artifacts of absolute genius. The magicar reactor in front of Sigurd and Alina was a bit too large. It can be compared with a small boulder with the height of 4 meters and the width of 8. Indeed, this thing was created by exploiting a massive stockpile of Stalrim and Soul Gems. This magicar reactor has the ability to produce 80 mega-MP on the Magicameter. Powering a massive artifact like the Tower of Music needed that much power after all. As Sigurd and Alina proceeded further in the facility, they saw some people in distinctive robes. These are, Jonrad asked, Winterhold mad scientists. The former core members of the Creation Club, one of the college's most formidable student clubs. The always turned on, Alile, the nerd orc, Morbagog, the big cat who loves small things, Marin, and the arsonist, Yisra. They are misfits in society, but somehow John found them. We found him. He taught me how to make people naked with my voice. Alile said as she offered a handshake to Sigurd. Yes, whatever you say. Alina held Ellie's hand away. Guys, take us atop the tower, please. We need to install the last piece. Understood this way, Marin said as he led the way to a small room with a lever in its center. The group followed him, and Sigurd kept looking around. Why are we all cramped up in a small room? He asked. Just wait and see. Alina replied as Marin pulled the lever. The floor shook for an instant and started to rise up. Sigurd looked at the ceiling with worry, but it was rising up with them. What in the world? It is a lift developed by Marin in imitation of the Dwemer lifts. It moved by those 4 big gears in the corners and draws energy from the large mega magicar reactor. Morbagog explained. Yes, this one has come to a conclusion that lifts need very small parts under their floors to move the big gears. I came to Boss John with the idea, and he helped me with the design. Small machines are really marvelous. Marin continued. How small? Sigurd asked with worry. Very small. Tiny. Isn't that amazing? As worry started to appear on Sigurd, Alina spoke. It is nothing dangerous, father. I checked everything myself. Okay, daughter. As he said, the floor shook once again. Sigurd hurriedly held to his daughter. We arrived, father. Really? Yes. Marin opened the lift's door and all found themselves on a wooden roof. The top was not as vast as the base, which was easily imaginable from looking from the bottom of the tower. There was a pedestal standing in the center of the roof, and Alina walked to it, revealing the Elder Scroll that she hid in a cloth. Lady Boss, is that? The 4 mages recognized the Elder Scroll right away. Yes, and if you want answers, go ask John. Alina brushed them off as she installed the Elder Scroll on the pedestal and made sure it stays hidden. Sigurd surveyed the place and looked down the tower. It was indeed deserving to be called a tower, a building so high that it overlooked everything around as people looked so tiny from the top. The tower's height was almost 70 meters, an impressive height for the age's builders, but even though, the tower was still not complete. Only from the base of the tower up to 30 meters was just covered in stone while the rest was metal and would hurriedly made to counter the attack on Winterhold. Sigurd had to give it to John. The design was like none other in this world. The tower was a massive, with curved sides and pointy long top. The circular roof was just a small part of the whole thing. John said that the original version of this tower was built only with metal with the towering height of 300 meters. Alina came behind Sigurd and spoke. Come on, there is something like that out there in the world? Sigurd scoffed her off. You know, his past life, Alina said with a smile. Haha, and you believed it? Why not? The two became silent for a while. Sigurd then turned to his daughter with a small smile. a long black hair that resembled his as well as the same slim face of a moonblade. Other than that, her big eyes and delicate features were all from her mother. His smile only grew wider. Seeing you this old, building such things and preparing for big battles. Your mother would have been so proud of you, he said. His words were unexpected for his daughter's ears, but she received them with a smile. Thank you, father. Here, take this. Sigurd put something in his daughter's hand. That is father. You can't be. Take it. It is the silver hawk ring your mother gave me. It bears a powerful blessing of kind. Give it to that boy when he is man enough to ask you, and when he fixes his face too. Father, this is the best thing ever. Alina hugged her father right away. He froze for a second before hugging her back. As they parted, their eyes were a bit wet even in this strong blowing wind atop of 70 meters. Fine, go now, he said. I will, but before I go, here is what you need to do. Alina turned around and looked at the other four. Alile will man the tower according to the principle I gave you. Marin will make sure that the energy flow is going well and will be responsible of maintenance. Yisra and Morbagog will man those two dwarven ballistas on the sides. If anything came flying, shoot it down. Understood. Father will be here to supervise and protect you. He is one of the strongest people you will ever meet in your life, so don't be worried while working here with him. And father, those four may be misfits, but they are excellent mages whose generosity drove them a bit to the edge of their minds. They will handle it all. As you see, daughter. Good. Now that everything is all handled, I hope you all luck. You too, lady boss. You too, daughter. Alina walked to the edge of the tower and whistled. A few seconds later, a large shadow covered the top of the tower. Whoa, that thing again, Sigurd said with a wide grin. The newly arrived was Lochther, Sky Tyrant, the snow-capped griffin of Alina. She held to its neck's feather and jumped atop of Lochther. See, father, he grew even more in 1 month. Children grew so fast. She laughed. Sigurd nodded to his daughter with a smile as he saw her fly away on the griffin. They indeed do, child. Wulfr's front. Away from Winterhold to the north, a large band of warriors gathered on the beach of the Sea of Ghosts. Firemans, moonblades, and dare dragon troopers. This force was something hidden from everyone by Alina. There were faces like Scotty Firemane and Tormund Firemane in the group. None could underestimate what this group will do in the battle, even though the plan was kept a secret from the normal soldiers. What was most interesting was not the force itself, but the place they have gathered around. It was a cave with a massive entrance away from the sea and all. Something that none were allowed in other than the top brass of the three entities. Wulfr, who just came from Winterhold, walked between the tents and arrived at the cave. He walked in right away and was greeted by Vladimir Firemane. How is Jorna? Vladimir asked. Sick, worried. She wanted me to stay. Wulfr said. Mother said that women become very overprotective when they are pregnant. It is said that Hafther's mother killed a bear when by her bare hands she was pregnant with him. Vladimir said. That's Hafther we are talking about. He will take us to oblivion one day by his actions. Wulfr retorted. Sovngarde, brother. Sovngarde, where we will drink, eat, and fornicate to the rest of our days until the battle of the worlds end with shore. Hafther popped up out of nowhere. How much did he drink? Wulfr asked. Don't ask me. That's why you are leading us in this fight, not that dumb fool. Vladimir brushed Hafther away. Come on, brothers. I am not even drunk yet. Hafther retorted. Look, before you come, we had something we needed you to know. Hafther walked in the cave, and the two followed until they arrived at where the rest are. There was Phrygia, Ragnar, Lela, Veka, Zal, Kara, Zend, Gunmar, and the rest of the Firemane cousins. Zend, you are the eldest. Announce it. Hafther spoke to Zend's son of Njord. Well, why not? I am a married man, so I can't be involved a lot on your follies, yet today is an exception, he said as he raised a horn of mead to Wulfr. Wulfr, you are always a brother to our brother Jonhild, even more than us, and we all envy you for it. You stole young Bjorna's heart, so we know you are a lucky man among men. Thus today, We the Council of Cousins agreed to announce you a brother, a cousin, and a firemane. We also took the Elders' agreement, but the Council of the Cousins is what matters. To Wulfur. To Wulfur. The boys and girls laughed loudly, but Wulfur was frozen in his place. He was just trying to realize what he heard once again. Congratulations, brother. A voice woke him up from his mind-numb state. Wulfur looked behind him to see his sister, Sviti. Why are you here? Well, I wouldn't have missed this moment for the world, she said as she hugged Wulfur. You are now a part of a family. We always wanted that since the days of the orphanage, right? But, sister, you are my family, all that I need. There are Bjorna and John and the others. Wulfur was flustered. And it will keep getting bigger. Cheer up. I can fit anywhere, you know? Sviti patted her brother's arm as she joined the party of the firemane. Wulfur watched her closely as she sat beside someone in particular. It was none other than Hafthor. Wulfur sighed in his heart. He sensed the chemistry between the two since almost a month, but that was one weird match, the gentle, quiet girl and the foolhardy, brash boy. He couldn't help but drink his horn in one go. That's the spirit. Vladimir and Ragnar approached. Now, are you ready to discuss what we are about to do? Yes, he replied and walked further in the cave. There, one could see a quiet place with a big bonfire and large silhouettes. Scotty Firemane saw the boys and nodded for them to approach. Alina's counterplan is all relying on us. Are you boys ready? She asked. Are you, Mother? Wulfur said back. You'll get yourself killed. I know it. She said as she led them further in the cave. Loud footsteps, or rather thuds, were heard. Wulfur and the rest gulped as they witnessed the mighty beasts deep inside. This will be one glorious counterattack, Scotty said with a manic smile. John's front. You know, when you told me Winterhold was fun, I was really convinced with that bathhouse thing, and all but you really got me good. Never have I ever thought that I, Brahm of Johanna, would jump in a dark hole in the earth with a tall maniac like you. Brahm the mercenary was complaining to John all day long. Shut up, you are the one who agreed on this, John retorted. I mean, yes, you can buy my soul with 500 golden septims each day you are hiring me, but not drag me in Winterhold's most infamous death trap. I just showed you I can take us out of this from where we entered. Don't make a fuss. Are you serious? Even if you are John Dare, the cursed child of the Firemans, or even Azura's laborer, you want me that the two of us will conquer the sightless pit alone, like a piece of cake? Ugh, Brahm groaned as he gave up on John. The two of them were in what seemed to be a very old Dwemer ruin, one that was badly damaged with death traps and Fommer all over the place. John wasn't using anything other than a lever-action crossbow, and shot down all the Fommer in his way. The Fommer, or the Snow Elves, are a fallen race of elves that degenerated over the years from the days of the First Era. Those Fommer are now just some alien race of the underground that survives on eating lost adventurers and insects, or sometimes cannibalism. One of the worst nightmares for adventurers were those Fommer. John was acting stealthy, relying on the weak senses of the Fommer, and shot them with silent bolts of his crossbow. If any large band of Fommer came out, he would let Brahm summon his Daedric band of Dremora and annihilate them. I must admit that using Sanguine's Rose to train your own band of Dremora is genius. You even made those Dremora escape the realm of Maroon's Dagon and become some sort of liberated Dremora that live in a pocket realm and even hear your call without Sanguine's Rose. Genius indeed. John said. I want to say that I hate prying eyes, but the way you analyze things right now made me prideful and scared at the same time. You are something on your own, John Dare. Thanks. I've seen that technique of conquering a pocket realm on Oblivion by a force of your own with a necromancer clan called the Blackbone once. A real marvel. Actually, I stole the idea from them. Haha. Good call. Brahm of Johanna was a real genius in conjuration, even with a cheat item like Sanguine's Rose. Conjuring Dremora was the trickiest as they were cunning and manipulative, but Brahm has completely tamed a band of Dremora and trained them in a Spartan way. He even called the Daedric band of Johanna after the sacred band of warriors from his hometown. As the two exchanged notes in conjuration, John and Brahm arrived at the end of the ruins. The two have sped run a Dwemer ruin with stealth and surprise attacks. John even promised all the treasures in the ruins to Brom other than what is inside the sightless vaults. By the time the two finished everything, they arrived to a dwarven pedestal that seemed to fit a certain item. John took out the attunement crystal and it to fit on the pedestal right away. It started to revolve and make sounds like an engine. "You can take it on the way out and complete your labor," John said. "Thanks." As the two opened the large gates of the sightless vaults, another part of the ruins met them and John started to tread carefully. This place wasn't something he played before. As he arrived at the innermost part of the ruins, he was met with a vast sealing chamber. John smiled as he saw what was inside the seal. He proceeded to solve the riddle of the room right away by fixing the steam pipes, and it took him almost an hour. As he rotated the last valve, he felt something from the walls of the room. Loud metallic thuds were moving towards him. A ridiculously large Dwemer centurion made of ebony was standing in front of John, blowing a strong steam breath at him. "Watch out," Brom shouted, but John didn't move an inch. The steam overflowed in his place and enveloped him completely. The ebony Dwemer centurion walked forward a few steps as it confirmed that its enemy was still alive. "Weak," John's voice sounded, and in his hand, the elder staff appeared. John pointed the staff towards the Dwemer centurion's head and his will was translated. The staff elongated like a bolt of lightning and its pointy tip hacked through the centurion's head. The Dwemer construct was disabled just like that and fell down. The room of the sealing chamber opened for John to walk in, and there they were, the solution to John's dilemma. Sunder and Wraithguard. An official mod on the Creation Club by Eleonora and other modders. Legends Lost, Add Sunder, and Keening to Skyrim. Chapter 385. The Battle of Winterhold 2. The Queen of Winterhold, Orga's Front. The clans of the Nords spread across Skyrim like herds of mammoths, though their numbers and influence upon the land are far greater. Each clan, however, makes its mark in a different way. Some clans are known for their hunting skills, or their forestry, or their crafting. Some clans are large, others small. Some take a prominent role in government and others isolate themselves hidden. And then there are the dark clans, the clans no one deals with or even speaks of, and those 9 clans that gathered in the frozen land of Winterhold. Combining their forces with the Thalmor, the force's number reached that of 15,000 fighters with many mages from all parties involved. The morale was high just by looking at the sheer number. One day was more than enough to take down all of Winterhold in one wave. In the worst cases, Winterhold can muster up to 5,000 fighters and a lot of mages, but none can hinder the horde that gathered. That was what was being spread around by the upper echelons of the clans to motivate the fighters. None of that, however, mattered to the elected leader of the Dragon Hunt Alliance. Yes, there is one, and that was none other than the youngest girl among all of the clan's leaders, Orga, the young leader of the Stormfist clan. She has a realistic view of things and took caution in every action she took. Her clan was branded as evil for 1,000 years, and she was named after its founder, so she felt the deep responsibility of leading her clan to triumph in good or bad. The Dragon Hunt Alliance was a chance to support her goal of gaining riches to her clan and making better contacts for the Stormfists even among the Dark Clans. How the commander of the Alliance got appointed was a singularity. The newly discovered ambassador of the Thalmor suggested a leader appointment right after her identity got blown away. The Nords looked at her with distrust, and no one wanted to choose her as a leader. In fact, everyone voted for himself, and they included Orga, which put the situation to a stalemate. The surprise was Elnwyn's vote, which surprisingly came last and went for Orga's favor. The Thalmor has the right to vote, of course, as the largest force in the Alliance, and Elnwyn was surprisingly cooperative with the Nords. Unlike the usual attitude of her kin, she was rather swift and managed the stubborn Nords easily. That way, Orga became the leader. Of course, everyone suspected her to be in cahoots with the Thalmor, and that put on her mood, but she had to do it anyway now that everyone was willing to listen to her, yet that didn't mean she was going to ignore the Thalmor. Elnwyn's action was clear. She wanted Orga to lead as the youngest leader and the most inexperienced one. Elnwyn was clearly up to no good, and wanted to use the Nords as the shock force for her mages to level everything to the ground afterward. Orga wasn't a fool and caught on to that. The best response was to tread carefully. She gathered all the scouts' reports and advanced on 3 fronts. The main siege front right to Neo-Sarthal from the west consisted of 10,000 fighters and most of the mages. The Thalmor were tied to this front to not let them out of her sight. If Elenwen tried to disagree, she will appear as the manipulative she is. The raid front, which was a group of light raiders that of 3,000 fighters that would cross the mountain of the Shrine of Azura and descend on the whispering village of Dunmare, plaguing and burning it so they can draw the forces of Winterhold out and kill them in waves. The reinforcing front was the 3rd front and the safest one, made of 2,000 fighters. Orga made sure to put most of her clansmen in that front, so they can be the fastest to enter the battle whenever there is victory and the fastest to escape whenever there is a problem. This group was centered in 3 places. One behind the main front, one on the Wayward Pass with the excuse of cutting reinforcement, and the last near Fort Castav to keep an eye on the Imperial Legion. The plan was solid from all fronts, and the march to Neo-Sarthal began with first light. Orga personally was in front of the march as she wanted to witness Neo-Sarthal defenses with her own eyes. The leader of the defense was by all means expected, Alina Moonblade rather than Jonhild Firemane. Orga knew it when all the other leaders expected to see Jon on top of the wall. Something is not right. However, even Orga had to point out that something was out of her expectations. Alina Moonblade was known as a formidable strategist, and the reports of her swift triumph over the Forsworn in the mini-battles during the fall of Jon Dare. Neo-Sarthal had 2 walls, a lower front wall and higher back wall. The 2 walls are lined with a number of wooden bridges. The strategy of doubled walls is not that effective in a real fight, even with its appearance. The back wall can't be used for a direct defense, and would stand in the way of the front wall, keeping it ill-supplied. If it was effective then, by all means, many forts would be double-walled. Not just that, the defenders were clearly focusing on the back wall rather than the front wall. Once the attacker takes control of the front wall, they can use it to defend their forces while exhausting the defenders with long-range magic and arrows. What is she thinking? Orga wondered to herself and kept looking. The fresh look by her eyes gave her more ideas of what Winterhold is capable of rather than the badly narrated reports of the scouts. Neo-Sarthal should be less than half a year old, yet its defenses are heavy and the walls are all complete. This surely must have taken a lot of time and effort. The other thing was the tower that was mentioned in the reports. Even though not complete, none could tell what this tower was for and what will it do. The scouts couldn't notice things Orga just noticed, and she started to get agitated. Surely the Thalmor didn't share everything with her, considering that Elenwen made a recon on her own once. Restless, Orga took action. She rode forwards with 2 other clan heads to a distance safe from arrows and called for the defenders with their voices. A response came, and the gate was opened. 2 riders came out on flaming horses. One was Njord Firemane, and the other was Olaf Moonblade. 2 formidable fighters, and the number 2 men of their clans. Not long after, a flying beast landed on top of the wall and carried Alina Moonblade, who joined the other 2 and headed towards the 3 leaders of the Dragon Hunt Alliance. Old Scap, you're still alive? Olaf Moonblade cussed at the Scap the Old of the Knicker clan. Moonblade, fuck. You coward fucks escaped your home like the coward shits you are. I swear on my son's graves I'll end your line. All barks no bite. Your sons got all killed like the dogs they are because their father is a fool, it seems. I'll kill you. Hold it. Orga Stormfist stopped the raging Scap the Old. She gazed at Alina and sneered. Hey, beautiful. You are that girl Alina, right? Alina looked down on Orga with cold eyes. Lochther felt the disrespectful tone towards Alina, and his glare made the horses restless. Orga Stormfist. Aye. Orga calmed her horse and spoke. I heard you are rumored to be the most beautiful lass in the whole Skyrim. I can see why now. Alina's face showed ridicule. Let me guess. The man you loved lost interest in you after he saw me once and you swore to skin my face? What? Nah. Wait. Is that the level of jealousy you get? Most of the time. Poor you. Don't worry. Beautiful. My interest in your face is nothing like that. Nice beast, by the way. He hates you. Ha ha ha. Tell you what. You turn sides now, and I'll make you my woman. No one will ever touch you, I promise. Orga said with a dirty smile. Insolent fool. Olaf Moonblade was about to unleash his gift on Orga. Uncle, please. Alina spoke, calming him down. She then turned to Orga with a faint, seducing smile. Tempting, she said, but you are not my kind of gal. Between Alina and Orga, one was a beauty that would drive men insane, and the other was a rough tomboy. Haha, so there is a kind after all. Of course, I am really open-minded unless when it comes to sharing, and to be honest, the bunch of women around John is really annoying. I can accept another one or barely two, but now there is a vampire girl. Him? Sorry for drifting. I would complain all day, but let's agree that your severed head will have more time to listen. Ha ha ha. So be it. My offer still stands, though. Orga was amused. Here's my offer, then. Turn around. Leave. Run as far as I can't see you, or I swear on everything named sacred in Daedric that your clans will be wiped out to your youngest descendants. The smell of blood in Alina's tone was clear. Every word she said meant a war declared on each of the 9 clans. More to that, Lochther's majestic appearance was carrying strong frost energy with it. More to that, Alina had a staff in her hands that aura was pure evil. The skull of corruption was handed down by John to Alina now that he has no use of it. Very well. Orga and her companions turned around to leave. As Alina was about to return to, a voice called out. Wait. The 2 parties looked at the one who called. A white horse ran on the snow and stood between the 2 parties with a robed person on it. From the voice, it was a woman, and from the appearance, it was a high elf. You? From where did you get that griffin? The woman asked with a restless voice. Lochther, whose height is above 2 horses, felt the greedy gaze of the woman and screeched at her. Easy, boy. Alina calmed it with a couple of words and didn't even bother to reply. She just led her party to Neo-Sarthal. Human, when I speak to you, you fucking answer. The high elf lady didn't take being ignored well. A highly dense magicka overflowed and assaulted Alina while completely avoiding Lochther. Alina was sensitive to all manners of magicka and felt the changes right away. She turned around with her eyes gleaming red and turning into slits. 2 pure forces of magicka clashed. One was white and quite dense, proud and arrogant, while the other was like flooding river that would obliterate everything. As Alina's magicka met the elf's, it was not to be called a clash, rather than a complete overwhelm. Alina's eye powers were custom-made to obliterate souls, and magicka was nothing but a thin energy coming from the soul. The elf woman was already on her knees. How? Alina's eye powers are a wild shotgun. Wherever they aimed, they do the job. The mere glance of Alina killed the white horse ridden by the elf woman, causing its skin to be cut open and sink in a pool of its own blood. The woman was much stronger and endured a second, 2, 3, but her soul was being ravaged and her body was getting affected by the second. Put the effect aside. The feeling was indescribable. A wave of agony, pain, dread. Every damn feeling that one escaped from. Every negativity and worry. Every fear and nightmare. All at the same time. The woman barely held for a little while as a loud scream echoed far and wide. Alina wasn't holding back anything. Before the situation escalates further, 3 high elves popped out of nowhere, 2 with tower shields and 1 mage. The mage covered the elf woman with her own body as if to sacrifice herself for her, and the 2 elf soldiers attempted to block the magic. Alina stopped her eye powers with a haughty smile, but not until the 2 elf soldiers exploded in their blood as well. She looked at the elf mage with satisfaction. I presume you are Ambassador Elenwen? The mage stood from the unconscious elf woman and looked at Alina with caution. And you are the rumored Lady of Winterhold. Charmed. The situation was sensitive and Elenwen seemed restless. Seeing the fallen elf woman behind her was something she would have never imagined. That woman who intruded on the last-minute negotiation was an arch-wizard that just arrived from Alina, and she was Elenwen's old master, an elf whose age was beyond 500 years. The high elves didn't hear about that griffin from the reports, as Lochther is a lazy one who loves to sleep in the snow all day and only come to play when Alina calls. The high elves were shocked, senseless, and questioned how can a symbol of their homeland appear on the other side of the world. More to that, the griffin was a snow-capped griffin, the rarest of the rare, a sacred breed that lives above the clouds of Cloudra City. The high elf woman jumped on a horse hellbent on taking that griffin right here, right now. The other high elf arch-wizards didn't stop her. She was basically going to bully a child. In truth, there were 10 arch-wizards other than Elenwen herself, and they were all in a confident mood to bring down the force in Winterhold in less than a day. Now, as Alina showed enough power to put down an arch-wizard, the rest felt the threat. Such power. This girl is dangerous. We can't let such an enemy live. Absolutely. A Nord with such power. Are the heavens teasing us? Too stupid to showcase their trump card from the get-go. We kill her first. Telepathic whispers were exchanged between the arch-wizards 10 miles away from Neo-Sarthal, all with Alina at their aim. She, who was far away, looked back at each and every one of them. She could only wait for the fight to start, just to see those insolent fools suffer. Elf, I'll give you the same offer. Alina spoke to Elenwen. Take all those lowlives you brought, and I will consider not damning every Thalmor I come across to oblivion. Elenwen's face stiffened. She barely kept her cool after hearing the word lowlives being said about her people. She put on a fake smile and nodded. A generous offer from the Queen of Winterhold. Yet I say you bite more than you can chew? We'll see about that. Chapter 386, The Battle of Winterhold, 3, A Dreadful Start. I owe you guys tons of bonus chapters, and I intend to deliver. There are 6 monthly chapters plus 3 bonus vote chapters, so help me God. This is the first, 1/9. Elenwen's front. As she took her old master away, Elenwen looked back at Winterhold with shaken expressions. Getting cold feet? A voice reached her. She looked to her left and found a high elf man waiting for her. Lord Kalar, let me see. The man approached Elenwen and checked on her master that was rendered unconscious by Alina. That is one vicious spell Farlime took, agonizing pain by overloading her nervous system with corrupted energy. Very vicious. Will she recover? Yes, but only thanks to her powerful constitution. The other guards you took exploded in a bloody mess. That's a powerful one we are dealing with. And Master? Take her away. She can't battle and will surely develop a trauma. The rest of us will take on that human girl first thing. Go. Elenwen nodded and carried her master away to the Thalmor hidden camp. She wasn't in the right mind after experiencing Alina's power herself. As she teleported in front of her master just a few minutes ago, she was exposed for Alina's stare for a second. The dread that crawled all her skin and how her dark thoughts and the world were jumbled together was a mind-breaking experience. Now, looking back at Winterhold, Elenwen realized that this situation would take some strange turns because of that Nord girl, and there may be more surprises. Winterhold was hellbent on fighting off all spies for a reason, and now Elenwen felt the disaster. Still, 9 Thalmor arch-wizards and 9 Nord clans. This should be either a crushing fight or a marvelous stand. Only time can tell. Alina's front. Goddamn it. Behind Neo-Sarthal's gate, Alina staggered off Locthar and held her head, massaging her temples. That opponent she faced was someone formidable. Her eye powers were being drained to blindness as she fought that arch-wizard off. Now, she can't use her trump card once again in less than 24 hours. She took out her Storm Rage crown from her robe and put it on so that it stabilizes the pain and restore her agony. I powers faster. Lady Boss, everything is in place. A trooper came and reported to her. Good. She wasn't intending to waste any more time and climbed the walls to stand on top of the gatehouse. There, she joined the top brass. Master, Father, Mother, Nerina, Jonrad and Hilda were there. They looked a bit nervous and only nodded to Alina. Nerina was watching from the enemy battlements, detecting the strong enemies stealthily. She could count many powerful auras, some of are rivaling her and Jonrad's, while many others were voice masters, master mages, and aura experts. Not sure about open battles, but this is not going to be easy, she said. Our odds are good. Alina's plan is very solid, and this is the best ground I fight on so far. Hilda was optimistic as she sharpened her Great Dane axe. Jonrad only exhaled as he sat down on the ground to keep his meditate and focus. Tyr came on the wall and joined Jonrad in his medication. The two sat facing each other for a while before starting some weird warrior customs they're used to. What are they doing? Nerina asked. Exchanging some sort of bond. Many years have passed, and I never understood what kind of ritual is that. Only thing I know is that those two will go wild as a pair. Something like combining their thoughts to cover each other's openings. Hilda replied. Sounds great, Nerina said. Sounds gay to me, Hilda retorted. Jonrad and Tyr frowned at the same time and glared at her. A minute later, Ela joined the group. Another daughter of mine. I discovered that I have too many daughters now, Hilda said. Thank you, Lady Hilda, Ela said back in her stiff tone. How is it? Alina asked Ela about something. No one out of his place. No spies, no scouts, no assassins. That's a relief. After Ela arrived in Winterhold, she and Alina cooperated as a deadly duo of surveillance and hunting. They covered all the holes in Neo-Sarthal just by the two of them. Where is John? Ela asked. Over there. Nerina pointed to the south between the summit of Mount Anther and the Shrine of Azura. Isn't he exposed? This mountain road will be exposed to enemies who will try to raid the Whispering Town. He has a mercenary with him, and he is up to something big. Everything is in order. We are now waiting for the enemy to move. Oh, I dare them, Alina said in a low tone while covering her mouth. This girl has developed one nasty habit, Hilda commented. It was as she said. Alina became very violent and bloodthirsty during the time of John's absence. Of course, she doesn't show that side to John as she doesn't need it beside him, but now she was on her top state of focusing. She stood at the battlements and rested her palms on them. I am starting now? She focused on the scene in front of her, became silent. Those who know her can tell that she is now looking in the future. 1 minute forward. That time was enough to tilt the tide of any battle. Alina was living the events of 1 minute forward and could still keep her senses with the present. One of the original eye powers that were bestowed on her by Kine. They will move in 50 seconds. Ready the signal flares? She spoke. On it, Ela was ready with some magic scrolls behind Alina. Boo-boo. Not long later, the horns of the Dragon Hunt Alliance echoed on the horizon and the march began. Arranged in columns, formations, siege units, ladder units, and mage units, the 10,000 fighters of the Dragon Hunt Alliance were walking the mile between them and Neo-Sarthal. Drums echoed, horns blown, bards shouted. The dragon hunt was starting. Alina has already seen all that and was eagerly waiting for the perfect timing to see how her visions will be applied. It was basically cheating and she was all in for it. After all is fair in love and war. The green flare, Alina said, and Ela tore open the green scroll, launching a pillar of green light in the early morning sky. That signal was for everyone to move. The first to respond to the signal was the Tower of Music. Alile, Yisra shouted. I know, the latter replied as she moved some levers, then beat the big button. Magical energy started to be felt through the tower on a large scale, and sounds started to be heard. This phenomenon was just the basic function of the Tower of Madness. As the sounds became clearer, the tone was heard and vibrated far and wide in the ears. The sound of drums, the sound of trumpets, the sound of music. The troopers behind the wall of Neo-Sarthal all stood up and felt something strange. They were burning from inside, not from fear or magic, but from excitement. The sound struck deep in their hearts and made their blood rush with a sudden, indescribable feeling of pride and honor. It was just music with no singing or words, but it reached deep and made them all jump up. The drill sergeants and the commanders of the troopers started shouting and conveying orders as soon as the music started. This was the signal they were told, and the troopers were all pushed to man the walls. Behind the first wall, many troops were ready on as the second was being packed with troopers only in certain places. The order came for all the troopers to stomp louder with their feet on a certain pace to keep up with the music. The piece of music was none other than the British Grenadiers, a famous and swift military march music. The two walls were fully manned, ready to receive visitors. Is it just one large-scale bardic knowledge spell? Ela asked, while being armed with an Elder Scrolls. Please, put some imagination in this. The tower is not even functioning full power yet. The focus now was on the other side as the enemy marched steadily. Orga's front. She was riding on her horse in front of the march. Now, they are only half a mile away from Neo-Sarthal. With her aura, Orga could see Alina looking down on her from half a mile away. She just can't stop giving me those chills. Orga shivered as she murmured, Commander, your orders. An officer asked for instruction. The first wave. Half a minute later, the second wave. Quarter a minute after, the third. By your orders. The officer rode to the side and started giving the commands. The first wave indeed moved forward, formed of formations of shield-bearers, low-ranked mages, and ladder carriers. There was no catapults or siege engines in Skyrim's warbooks. Only mages and voice masters were the answer to fortifications. Orga sent the best of alliances on the second wave, as when the first wave absorbed the first defensive counter. As they marched, the soldiers were carrying their shields up for a cover of the soon-to-be-expected arrows. 500 meters away was an area of no response, and so was 400 and 300 meters. 200 meters was the danger zone for the wall catapult to respond, then 100 for the danger area of the arrows. With such a swarming horde, even arrows were not expected to cause much damage. The scene was already imagined in the head of Orga and the other commanders. She looked to the right to see the team of the High Elven mages that kept itself away, and she smiled. They put her, a 19-year-old girl, as the head of the troops, but she was already a very experienced leader with 4 years of commanding experience. Sure, not much, but being a mercenary operating in High Rock was one of Orga's strong points. Buh! The attack horn sounded. As her plan was flowing smoothly, she suddenly felt an ominous feeling as her soldiers moved. A strange sound of music came from the Neo-Sarthal. It was unexpected and uncalled for in many ways. An unexpected thing in battle is the worst kind of situation by all accounts. Why music? Orga wondered. She wasn't an expert in magic herself, so she looked to the shaman she brought with her, and he shook his head. She looked to the Knicker clan's head, and he was as clueless as her. She then looked at the elves to see their faces grow pale. They were more sensitive to magic than any human, and their stiffened faces meant something not right. Too bad the march has already started, and the soldiers would never back down anytime soon, music or whatever. Orga rode to them with a concerned face. What is going on? She asked. Very strong magicka. This is a large-scale spell, the largest I have ever seen. A young elf said. What large? Where is the spell? Orga asked. The music. It is the spell, you dim-witted human. The elf lashed at her right away and continued. It is no attacking spell, but if they have this much magicka to use for an attack, why not use it right from the get-go? The elf raised a fair point, and Orga ignored the insult for now. Winterhold was fighting in her own way. This wasn't good by any means. Does the music do anything? To us, no. But to their soldiers, I fear if they have a 1,000 soldier, the effect of that music will make them fight like 3,000. Smart. Is this the way they are going to compensate for the numerical disadvantage? Orga looked at Alina and smiled. What is that Puss Peppers doing? She was thrilled now. It seems Alina's confidence wasn't baseless from the start. This big music must be the true trump card of Winterhold. Just like the spell, Harmony, this music can make soldiers tire slower and become stronger. This is just an army-level spell. The only difference is it being a buff rather than an offensive one. An offensive army-slaying spell was something only a power like the Empire and the Aldmeri Dominion can make, but it was more of a forbidden-level spell, higher than that of master-level and arch-level spells. But it was true. Why not use this power on offense rather than defense? The answer should be a lack in technique or something along the lines. Orga was worried less now, but she still couldn't do anything about the march. It was going to be okay anyway. In front of magic power, buffs and all that was nonsense. Still, the harbinger of Orga's worries came faster than she could think. Her troops were now only 2 meters away from Neo-Sarthal, started to take the ground up to the wall, and not a change happened until the second red flare was launched in the sky. The change was sudden and unprecedented, ruthless and cruel, scary and mighty. Not even the elves, the humans, or the spirits could see this one coming. The world felt wrong in all senses of fashion. An artificial phenomenon that made everyone lose hope and desire. The music stopped, the air settled, the blood froze. No sound was heard. This was it. No sound, no tone, no music. Utter silence. The charge was going as the soldier crossed another 100 meters to be of the same distance to the walls of Neo-Sarthal. It was it. They stopped and looked around at each other. They couldn't hear themselves. They couldn't talk to one another as their tongues moved, but their voices were not there. The voice masters couldn't shout. The mages couldn't muster the magic. A no-magic zone, a no-voice zone, a no-talking zone. There was nothing they could do but look back at their commanders who were as clueless as they are. From the first wall of Neo-Sarthal to 500 meters at the front feet of Orga's horse, no voice was coming out. She extended her hand forward and snapped her fingers to hear nothing. She took it back and snapped her fingers to hear it. She was right on the edge and Neo-Sarthal was on the other with half of the Dragon Hun Alliance forces in between. The half inside the silent zone exchanged looks with the half outside. A young man looked at his brother on the other side with his lips moving. The one outside saw the fear in his brother's eyes and understood the word of help. It was a cruel reality. To hear nothing was scary. To lose the power to control your magic and voice were scarier. Darkness enveloped their hearts under the cold light of day. Even on the walls of Neo-Sarthal, the Dare troopers were utterly shocked. After the blissful music came this utter dreadful silence. Even they couldn't speak or utter a sound, not from the spell but from the dread. Only one voice broke the silence and traveled from Neo-Sarthal to Orga's ears. Alina's voice. Open fire. Chapter 387. The Battle of Winterhold, 4. Hour of the Death. The phenomenon known as the unmusic was something so dreadful that it became a nightmare for every enemy of Winterhold since this day. The death battle, the day of the unmusic, the unrecorded, too many names to describe an artificial event equivalent to a natural disaster. How exactly does it work? No one knew. Actually, no one could know. The area of the unmusic was a cursed place that would snare all the colors in the world. John may laugh it off and call it the blag, but he knew the truth. He was the architect of that forbidden magic after all. The music is everything in the world. The heart of the world, which is the heart of Lorcan, is also called the heart of music. Music means existence in this world. This music is created by everything that happens and gets recorded in the Elder Scrolls, whose number is uncountable and existence is as non-linear as time in the world of the Elder Scrolls. Manipulating the music of the world with magic is known as the tonal magic. Overdoing it has consequences, and that's what John did. He found a hole in the rules and used the power of the Elder Scroll to erase the music in a certain area, causing no magic or any sort of power to be used. Only weak mortals with thin layers of armor on their bodies walked on the edge of the old knocker's knife. To explain this phenomenon, it is an artificial quasi-dragon break. The dragon break is called the untime, an event where the dragon, aka time, breaks into realities that all happen at the same time, and when it ends, all the realities come true even if some realities opposed each other. Hint, that's how the Dwemer disappeared. Still, this is not the relationship between the untime and the unmusic. The two phenomena share one similarity, and that is the two of them can't be recorded by Elder Scrolls as events out of the world's control. Being out of the divine's protections, the souls of men shivered as they lost connection with their patron spirits. They didn't know the feeling, but their souls knew it. The Dragon Hun Alliance soldiers were already between the points of 100 and 200 meters from Neo-Sarthal's first wall. There was no going back by all means. To motivate them forward, Alina ordered the bombardment. Open fire. Her voice somehow moved through the soundless zone unheard, yet it reached the ears of the other people of the Alliance on the other side of the area. Expecting to see some sort of great fire, The heart-sunk faces of the Alliance commanders jumped of its places when they saw the scene next to appear. Beams of blue energy came out of the barrel-shaped objects fixed on the second walls. Those beams traveled in an instant and landed on the bodies of the soldiers and the ground near them, causing a terrifying scene to unfold. As each beam landed, it disappeared in cluster eruption accompanied by a shock wave occurred in where it landed. The effect was soul-crushing. None of the soldiers that were hit with the beams survived. Broken limbs, blood mess, fragments of bones and iron. It was not a battle, it was destruction. The battle didn't even start, and 1,000 died in less than a minute. That was how grim it was. The soldiers ran around like rats and hid where they could hide. Those on the ground withered in agony, and those who could run hid behind rocks and covered areas. It worked. Cannon fire was effective on tight groups and not on wide, loose formations. Those who could take cover, crawl prone on the ground, run out of sight, or blend with surrounding were safe for a moment. Still, they were way too close to death and literally playing on its palm. The cannon shots were descending on every corner on the land. The snow that settled on the land for years was jumping up with fierce eruptions that most likely was accompanied by someone's death. It was as if a gate from oblivion opened wide on Nirn. Neo Sarthel's Magicka cannons didn't stop until 5 minutes of constant bombardment emptied the charges of the Magicka reactors in these cannons. They needed at least a day to recharge or a change of reactors. From the point of view from the second wall of Sarthel where the cannons are positioned, the rocky plain of snow in front of the first wall was completely covered with a cloud of fine snow. Nothing could be seen until a couple of minutes later when it all settled down again. The image unfolding was hellish. The Dare troopers kept looking in frigid hearts at what happened to the enemies. Walking silhouettes, staggering figures, one's kneeling and wailing soundlessly to the skies, one's lying broken, one's barely mustering the courage to look around them and beyond their covers at Sarthel. From the 5,000 Alliance soldiers that started the siege, half of them perished under the Magicka cannon fire. Stillness and silence overtook the air both in the inside and the outside of the soundless zone, all just waiting to see what happens next. Whose turn was it again? None could tell. Should the Dare troopers on the wall start hunting the enemies with their crossbows? None could know. What now? Jonrad looked at Alina and wanted to say something, but Hilda glared at him not to utter a word. Even Nurina was having an inner conflict with herself. In her entire life, her first student was John and her second was Alina. She enjoyed teaching the two prodigies quite a lot, but her teachings led to such death and destruction. War was never like that in her head. It was about skill and tactic, yet now, things were rather depressing. She kept her magic up to detect any change of energies around so that she can protect Alina and also tell John's location. At that moment, she felt a strong heartbeat-like pulse from John's direction and her eyes widened. All her depressing thoughts went away. Those who would want to harm her son would all go to hell as far as she could care whether it is 1,000 or 100,000. She felt ashamed, feeling sorry or responsible just a second ago. Hilda was already hellbent on murdering that whole army just for John's sake. Such a counter was sudden and shocking, but it brought joy to her heart. Alina was narrowing her eyes as she kept looking at the future. Many possibilities could happen in the next moment. She kept looking at a certain boy across the battlefield, right next to Orga Stormfist, and kept saying, "Do it, do it." It was the butterfly effect she needed to start the next phase. That boy was looking at someone in the middle of the battlefield with sorrowful eyes. A brother, if Alina could guess right. That brother seemed to have lost his legs and was looking back at his brother with tears flowing from his eyes. Do it. What are you waiting for? In her future vision, the brother on the ground will bleed out and die, leaving his brother to kneel on the ground and cry, but that wasn't what she wanted. She wanted a different scenario to unfold. Pressure, shock, mayhem. She wanted chaos in the enemy lines. There were only 10 seconds for her the butterfly effect to expire. She jumped off her place and ran to the nearest Magicka cannon, pushing the trooper on it away, and aimed the cannon to position, charging it with her own Magicka. "Alina, what are you?" "Just one more." As she said so, The Magica cannon started to glow and the shot was unleashed. Strong gasps escaped from everyone as the recoil of the cannon hit Alina's body and she flew back to the crash in the battlements. Lady, Alina. The troopers ran to her, and so did her relatives on the gatehouse. A thin line of blood appeared on Alina's body as she staggered up and ran towards the front with everyone trying to support her. Yes, it happened. Now, do it. Haha. A crazy laugh escaped her as she saw the present unfold to the future she sought. On Orga's front, she was frigid still from the sight of the bombardment and barely looked forward at the sorry sight of her men. Beside her, the leaders of the other clans were in a sorry sight themselves. Such a tyranny was something unprecedented in the world of those people. As they sank into dread, a sudden eruption in the snow not far away from them woke them all up. They looked forward to see where it landed, but no one could point out the odd about this eruption other than it came a bit later than the other ones. Not until, "Brother!" a boy shouted with all the pain and dread in the world, then charged forward towards the soundless zone. "Harmy!" Orga shouted at her bodyguard that left his position and charged forward like loose an arrow. Her hand barely hung out as she jumped off her frightened horse. She wanted to stop her friend, but he has already run deep in the soundless zone. He could never hear her. But that wasn't all there is to it. Something unexpected happened. The sudden charge of Harmy caused the lines of the Dragon Hunt Alliance to fall restless. These people were all from the clans of Skyrim, and when a clan goes to war, brothers and parents fight shoulder to shoulder with their siblings and children. Just how many son, brother, or father were in the first half of the army, the half whose half is lying on the ground struggling between life and death? A lot. Too many. That last shot took the life of a brother in front of his brother, and the latter ran forward. This was the straw that broke the camel's back, or in Alina's vision, the first action that will move the rest of the army. Murderers! Save our brothers! Kill those bastards! The sudden change brought all the chaos in the world, not only to the soldiers, but to the clan heads. Orga saw Alina run to the side just a few seconds ago, but to think that she... Impossible! That Ice Queen staring on top of the wall was now grinning madly as she looked at the enemy falling in chaos. We can't sit around anymore. Forward. The Ironblood clan head had a lot of men in the field. There was no way he can control his men anymore while they saw their brothers dying. The horses will be of no use. Put the ladders on them and just run forward. The Farwinter clan head was in the same position. Gradually, all the clans started to fall to the chaos. Wait! You can't! Orga shouted to the clan heads. Shut up, girl. This is no longer a fight. Loose formations. Never form groups. The Knicker clan head shouted at her and kept giving orders for the rescue. We can't go in without a plan. Another clan head spoke. We need to take them then charge forward, or they will kill us all with their magic. We can only take cover behind the first wall. They don't shoot that magic from the first wall, and they can shoot at its base. We need all the shields and the ladders with us. It is all or nothing. The plan went loose, and the fight was no longer for raiding. It was vengeance, survival, and a must. Every clan realized, what does it mean if those weapons were taken out to offense rather than defense? It would be the end of the fucking world. An unforeseen charge occurred from the Wind Wolf clan, who was on the far north all by their own, and every other clan started to follow one by one. The true number behind Orga was barely 300 men. She did well keeping her family forces of 2,000 spread around the other fronts, but that was already very exposed. Milady, an officer of her spoke up. No, the Stormfist Brigade is all that our clan has left. We need to do something different. Orga looked right and left, then pointed out. That mountain valley south to Winterhold, if we go there, we will break from beside the Shrine of Azura and reunite with our men from the raiding teams. If we took over the Dunmere mining village on the other side of the mountain, we will be able to negotiate with that woman. Now, the sudden change of plans meant a lot to the future. Whether to live and die today meant nothing compared to the fate of tomorrow. The attackers were now struggling on the defense. Chapter 388. The Battle of Winterhold, 5. Hour of the Wall Fall. Orga's men started preparing. Before she rides in the soundless zone, she looked to the elves who didn't move 1 inch. "Elf, what's your move?" She shouted at the elf who cussed at her from a while ago. He looked at her with a stiff face, then pointed at the soundless zone. "You Nords can send each other all to oblivion. This is a suicide." "Humph! Cowards!" Orga snorted at the face of 2000 high elf and 9 arch-wizards included, yet none said a word to her. Walking in the soundless zone? No elf was born to do such a daring act. Elves are all about magic, and in a world of no magic, there was simply no hope for the marekind. Those burly Nords may not find it as crazy as the elves who were shocked senseless. As Orga rode in the soundless zone in front of her men, she diverted the route to the southeast away from the fight. Still, the feeling of losing all the ability to hear sound was maddening. She knew that the only way out of this hell is through it. If she dared to run backward, she can pretty much see that hell arriving at the doorsteps of her clan. The only group left was the Thalmor. 9 arch-wizards stood in front of the soundless zone with deep thoughts and frowns on their faces. Oriel's mercy. What sort of blasphemy did these humans create this time? I can't even begin to comprehend. If it an illusion magic that blocks the sound waves, then it is a petty trick, but that the sound waves are passing through the place yet carrying no sound. No, they are carrying all the sound yet they don't in a certain area. This is no normal magic. A magic that can dispel other magic in a certain area is understandable, but that block not the magic, but the very possibility of it. It is dreadfully genius and geniusly dreadful. We made a huge mistake. The Nords are indeed nothing special, but the cursed child has grown. He is 18 years old by now, and all we thought of the possibility of him gaining something other than the Elder Scrolls that transcends sense. Those magic weapons, that soundless zone. This may only be the beginning of something very ominous. Yes, we were only distracted by that red-eyed girl. Damn, that was a good trick. There is more beyond these walls. We need to focus now, brothers and sisters. Look closely. These magic weapons are not in the soundless zone, so we heard their sound from here. They fire from outside the zone, and their effect remains, which means magic can affect the inside of the zone, but can't be used from inside. Just what in the name of Magnus did they do? I don't get the principle. It is like adding more limits to the limits of the Mundus set by Doomdrum. It is beyond what we expected. More limits, like panning the spiritual realm and the immortal energy? How can a vicious thing happen? It is as if those souls of the dead won't find its way back to their spiritual reside. What do the Nords call it nowadays? Svelbark? Svendark? Sovngarde? Yes, that. Those who die in such a place won't go to that Sovngarde even if they died as valiantly as it is required. They are beyond the perception of Aetherius. This is madness. But the point is that we now should experiment fast. The 9 arch-wizards kept discussing the possibilities and casting magic at the soundless zone. As they expected, the zone was beyond the perception of Aetherius, the immortal plane, which is the source of magica. That alone meant a lot to elves whose spiritual beliefs are all about the connection between them and Aetherius, the land that was promised in their faith and what they seek to reclaim by breaking from the prison of Lorcan, Mundus. To them, this was adding another prison on the prison, a sort of heresy, infidelity, and blasphemy that is by no means acceptable. If it was the young mages and soldiers behind them, then those kids would have turned into berserking fanatics and want to kill everyone in Winterhold with boiling blood, but the old archwizards were more collective and shrewd. They withstood years upon years of kneeling to the Septim Empire of men, and they kept their cool. They knew that in front of such tyranny, they were powerless even with their years of wisdom and knowledge. They had to tread carefully and uproot the dangerous humans before the situation escalates. The question is, can we cast a spell at a target 800 meters away and land a decisive hit? An archwizard asked. None could answer such a question. It is possible to reach this far, but the magic will gradually lose its power as it travels. Those magical weapons installed on the walls of Winterhold had a range of 500 meters with a devastating, and that can be called an amazing feat. We can. Another one replied and suggested something. The arch-wizard started to move. Sarthal, which is now a double-walled fort, gave off the impression of being a very fortified place. The second wall was higher, thicker, more fortified and packed with men, unlike the first wall which was packed with normal troopers who stood silently. The non-trooper recruits on the second wall were wondering the whole time about the ones on the front. They withstood the pressure of cannon shots passing from above them without being fazed. Surely, these were the elites from another camp as far as they could tell. Still, many had complaints about the tactic. Double-walled forts are not practical or used throughout history that much, especially when the front wall is very poor compared to the second. One can only imagine what Alina has in store. The attackers from the Dragon Hunt Alliance understood one thing. They are to protect themselves by taking over the first wall. The distance between the two walls was seemingly 15 meters, which provided enough cover from the cannon fire. The primary goal of the attacking horde was to secure their fallen relatives and rescue them before the second round of the cannon fire starts. Many realized that they may be walking into an ambush as half of the first wave was killed off, and mostly the rest was left as a trap, but they didn't know that the cannons have run out of juice when they stopped firing. Their rescue was somewhat successful. They were out of the range of arrows and Sarthal cannons didn't shoot a single time. The Alliance started to regain some momentum with the hope of survival. They couldn't hear each other no matter what, yet the leaders of the clans started to develop some sort of signal as they kept onlookers on each other. The injured were lifted up and the non-injured were given a hand to stand. Some ran after seeking their relatives, and some ran after being rescued, but no one stopped them. Still, the attack force of the Alliance was snapped down from 10,000 to 7,000. If only they could regain the other 5,000, which were spread around by Orga Stormfist. Some of the clan heads supported her plan at first to pincer attack, but now reinforcements were needed. The 3,000 soldiers keeping the Imperial fort in check and the 2,000 soldiers protecting the Wayward Pass were to be called immediately. The brilliant move that the clans performed was adapting to the cannon fire and come up with a loose formation tactic to minimize the losses. They even tied the siege ladders to the horses and let them run forward for the sake of saving weight. Bringing a catapult or a trebuchet was important in a siege, yet the Nords would rather use the Thursdayum to shout down walls and gates. A battering ram would sure have been a good idea, but the charge needed speed, and the terrain was not ideal for such tactics. The previous tactic was to shout the wall or blast it with magic, but now the tactic was to race to the wall, hoard it with all the ladders at the same time, then use it as cover. Surely beyond the first wall was the end of the soundless zone. The luck of the Dragon Hunt Alliance started to increase. A warm bolt of fire flew above their heads towards the first wall and barely grazed it, causing a slight black mark on its wall. Those who looked back saw the Thalmor mages creating arrays of magic to devastate the wall. The Alliance soldiers were hyped to see magic on their sides and ran forwards faster. Right now, there was a massive blood vengeance between them and the Dare troopers they need to settle. A second bolt of fire tried to attack the wall's gate, but the aim was kinda off, and the spell even got intercepted by a lightning spell that came from Winterhold's direction. The interception was very precise and only took a second. The elves frowned as they couldn't point out the caster, but they were clearly not able to challenge the half a mile between them and Sarthal. On Sarthal's walls, Alina was preparing for another thing. They are in range. Give the blue signal, and then the red signal. The green signal on my mark, she said as she aimed the skull of corruption on the first wall. Not far from her, the leaders of the clans were arriving down the first wall. They were desperately pointing to the troops and making signals just for the sake of organizing the mess. Their petty struggle seemed what Alina needed exactly. Scap the Old and Hoggy Blackblade, leaders of the Knickers and the Blackblades, ran and took cover in the wall. As their bodies collided with it, they started to finally hear some voices. An inch away from the first wall was out of the soundless zone. The attackers started to realize what is happening and ran to the wall like who found water after being stranded in the desert for days. Cries, wails, cusses and curses sounded out from those under the wall to those above. The agony and pain were just unbearable to keep in after finally managing to hear once again. Curse them. Curse those firemains and moonblades to oblivion. Scap the Old was furious as he hit the wall with his staff. His housecarls were desperately covering him with their shields and bodies, expecting some retaliation from the troops above the wall. "Don't waste our time. Bring those ladders to the wall. We've got to kill the ones above it before we—" "Wait." Hoggy Blackblades was shouting to the ones near him, but suddenly stopped and asked, "Why are they not defending?" He looked up the wall, but his angle wasn't right, so he pointed to one of his men in the back, and the latter looked up. At that time, the sky was covered with blue and red lights at the same time, and the man's eyes widened. He looked at his patriarch and shook his head with disbelief. Hoggy Blackblade pulled his man to the walls and told him to speak. "There is no one above the wall, patriarch." They all disappeared into thin air. That was indeed the case. All the troopers above the wall vanished as if they weren't there, to begin with. On the second wall, Alina was holding the skull of corruption and waving it at the first wall. All those silent soldiers on the first wall were merely illusions made by her. The real troopers were actually stationed and packed between the first and the second wall. Alina looked down and saw the reaction of those troopers. On their lead was John's housecarl, Trudvar. They started to move some large chains connected to the wall, and many men with sledgehammers started to break some logs jammed in the first wall. Crack crack asterisk asterisk craw. "Ay. Ach." The unpleasant sound was heard across Sarthal and traveled to the ones on the other side of the first wall. The land started to shiver for the change that was uncalled for. More to that, the sound started to return to the world. Still, the curses and the wails were all muted. The red signal was for the Tower of Music to cease function, and the blue signal, it was to break the logs and release the chains supporting the first wall. It was all a decoy. There was no first wall, it was just a trap. A big massive trap that none would ever think off. Those ladders fixed on the wall were packed with men trying to climb, but they tilted backward as the wall tilted towards the ones seeking its coverage. Away from the walls, the Thalmor felt the soundless zone disappearing and were about to cheer, yet they saw what was happening to the wall. Orga Stromfist too. She was taking the mountain road up to the shrine of Azura when she felt the change and saw the wall falling. The wall was made of long pillars built by mudstone fixed beside each other and were mostly hollowed. They were pulled up and pinned by chains and large logs of wood, with the original tilt in the land in front of the original walls of Sarthal. The large pillars hand no other way but to fall towards one direction, crack crack thud. One pillar after the other, the walls descended on the attackers and formed piles upon piles of men and stone. Hilda, Johnrad, and Tyr swarmed down from the wall with their housecarls and walked through the open gates. Hilda at the front holding her Great Dane axe, Johnrad and Tyr with the blade katana, and Sigurd, who just came down from the tower with his moon saber. At the double boys, "Those who lived are ours to weed out." Hilda shouted and rallied all the men behind her. On the wall, Alina held the last signal scroll in her hand as she tore it open and sent the final green signal. On the beach north of Neo Sarthal, Wulfr's men informed him with the signal. "It is our turn," he said. "Finally, who arrives first wins." Halfthor ran into the cave, and strange noises started to come out. "When what exactly?" Freya asked as she raced him. Wulfr shook his head and looked at Sviti. "You go home with the others, we will finish this." He walked in after Halfthor and Freya in the cave, and kept striding until he met Skadi. "Mother, your loyal steed awaits, boy. Hurry up and don't be picky."
"Yes."
He smiled as walked in further. "The big one is mine." "No, it is mine." In there, Halfthor and Freya were fighting over something, yet Wulfr walked swiftly behind them. "Neither of you will take it." Wulfr climbed the large animal that was on the lead of its herd and patted it. The animal was covered with a large armor befitting its size, bearing the insignia of the Dare Dragon Company. The newest and the most exclusive Dare Corp team was about to be sent to battle. The War Mammoth team. Chapter 389. The Battle of Winterhold. 6. Reinforcements. The Sea of Ghosts north to Winterhold. 10 longboats broke the waves heading towards Winterhold's shore. The largest one had 2 men of nobility air around them. "I hope we are not late," What happened last time when we met Thane Johnhild Firemane was bad enough for all manner of diplomacy. You better not advise me to change my mind. I'd advise you not to do something as reckless as entering the old holds with only 2,000 men, but if you are going to do something reckless, you better do it right. I'll make sure of that. Just remember, our objective is to stop the clans and break the siege. The current winter hold is too valuable to let fall in the hands of those idiots. Yes, you needn't remind me. Just land there and stop the fight in the name of. Shore ahead. A watchman up the crow's nest shouted. Finally, some land. This sea mist was going to suffocate me. Listen, we don't need to interfere too much. Thane Johnhild is missing, but he proved too tough to be held down by vampires. The lad's got fate, and that won't make some vampires stop him from achieving it. I was too foolish to let it all come to this. Chaos is upon us, and places like Winterhold would be a safe haven to folk when the time comes. Yes. I'll make sure that the diplomacies are all handled, and whatever Winterhold wants, Winterhold gets. The borders of Winterhold, Eastmarch, the Pale, Nightgate Village. A company of cavalrymen rode the chilly road south to Winterhold's Mount Anther, taking the way to Wayward Pass. On the lead were the commander and an old local guide. Old man, you sure you can guide us the right to that place? Yes, quit fretting over it. You can't reach Winterhold from the south road now. Fort Castav is locking the way and bandits are everywhere. Your 2,000 cavalrymen will need a faster detour, and they're where I know one. Good. Winterhold awaits then. If we manage to break the siege before things are too late, we will gain their friendship and trust. Thane Johnhild Firemane will sure not forget this and keep our relations friendly. You sure talk a lot about that along the way. Of course, Winterhold is a hold of greatness, and all the people ruling it in the past hundreds of years were all lacking. A man like Thane Johnhild can topple the scale of power anytime he wanted, yet he chose to remain neutral. I have faith in him, and I also have faith that Winterhold will be a safe place for Nords when the time comes. You are thinking too much. Winterhold is already a safe place with the people in it. You have no idea who those fuckers are dealing with. Oh, you talk like you know it all. Old man, tell me then, why did you offer to guide us to the Wayward Pass? I just heard there are Thalmor beyond those hills, and I wanted is to kill some. I see. No wonder they call you. Halt. Who goes there? A voice stopped the company of men from the mountain road. Are you a hold guard? The commander asked. You are not from the Stormfist band. Wait, those banners, these are? Capture that man. He's from the clan's alliance. The commander spoke to the men behind him. Damn it. Don't get closer. We are numbered 2,000 guarding the pass. The alliance scout shouted. And so said the rumor. The commander replied. But declaring your number without interrogation means your number is far less. Something must have happened, and your force got pulled to the battle. Am I right? Shit. The scout turned tail and ran. Haha. As I thought, the people of Fort Castav were not pressured, which means all the stalling forces are being pulled back. Winterhold should have put quite the stand. The commander laughed. Told you so. The guide replied nonchalantly. Fine old man. We've got some Thalmor to kill and a battle to stop. Winterhold's frozen wasteland, Sarthel's front. The fake wall fell on those who tried to seek shelter behind it, killing over 1,000 and injuring many. Now the attackers were open to a dozen of new dangers. Almost 5,000 Dare Trooper, Firemane, and Moonblade Guardsmen swarmed on the survivors under the lead of the Bloody Hilda. The fierce she-wolf was wielding a Great Dane axe and cutting men in half from the helm down. The debris of the first wall formed a chaotic battlefield that a decent formation can't be formed upon. The axemen and spearmen of Winterhold swarmed over those under the debris, killing and beheading. Never thought I'd see such a chaotic battle since the Red Ring. The feels. Hilda smelled the bloody air. Keep reminding me, you troll, Tyr said dissatisfied as he missed the Red Ring day due to injury. Easy, wife. No need to go full-on bloody just yet. The elves are not advancing. Jonrad stopped Hilda from ingesting herself in battle. Astra's Tower of Music. War drums music. Ah, nice one, Alina. Hilda called as she got fired up by the thrilling sensation. Goodness. After the wall fell, the men of the clans were pushed back away from the rubble and tried to regroup in a defensive formation. Of course, others already started escaping. As Hilda and the others charged at the attackers, the situation took a turn to complete chaos, but surely to the side of Winterhold. Spears and axes descended on the men of the clans from all angles and corners. The Dare troopers have accumulated a lot of stress in the days prior to the battle. Their mass-produced Germunbu helms and black shields made an image of horror in the eyes of their enemies as they formed a spear and shield formation form the flanks. The death was lurking from every corner, and despite being not cornered by any wall, the attackers fought and stood their ground despite the heavy losses and the low morale. Reinforcements. Reinforcements are here. As an attacker shouted, others could see the swarming numbers of men coming from the direction of the Wayward Pass. These were the other 5000 that were stationed on the other direction of Winterhold. They came running like a horde of hungry beasts. Ha ha ha, they brought down the wall. Look at that, a glorious day, brother. The herald on the lead called for the nearest retreating soldier. Fuck off. You know shit, we are dying here. The sudden reply caused wrinkles to appear on the forehead of the man. Wah? We heard you are victorious and needed reinforcements on your side. The herald questioned. Who said that? Most of the patriarchs died and we are retreating. Run for your lives. The retreating soldier didn't bother and deserted. Hey, the herald sensed that something was wrong. Just an hour ago, news came to reinforce the main force on Sarthal. The messenger even had one of those secret coded messages with him. In truth, that was the doing of Team Zero. A Khajiit spy has infiltrated the Thalmor servants and discovered the secret code of the messaging system between the forces. Alina used that to gather all the Alliance's soldier at one place. The herald wanted to turn around and inform the coming force with the news as he checked the battle situation with his own eyes, but an oddity happened. Madness. This hold is madness. The man that was deserting just a minute ago came back running to the other directions. The herald looked at what was chasing the man and his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Fucking mammoth. The reinforcements of Winterhold has arrived as well. The War Mammoth team, led by the Council of Cousins and followed by 2000 Dare troopers. 20 adult mammoths are all that it took to form this unit, detected only for destroying armies. Each mammoth was armored lightly like a cataphract horse and carried a large saddle that can take up to 20 lightly geared men with their bows and barrels of arrows. A small walking fortress that can absorb all manners of attacks and destroy anything in its way with its armor enchanted with magic resistance. Open ways for the boys. Hafthor was riding a mammoth on his own with 20 archer on its saddle and took a sharp turn towards the left flank of the coming reinforcements. Wolfer and the rest took the same action and put all the pressure on the reinforcements. The first shock of the mammoths was unseen due to the uneven land, and their charge was unstoppable. They may have already charged at the left flank, but they have already gone too deep until they obliterated the right flank. Damn it! You should have told me we have that. Hilda was claiming some poor souls under her axe when she saw the charge of the mammoths from afar. Her frustration was vented on another 20 to 30 poor souls. Away from the battle, Orga Stormfirst and the elves were still calculating their odds. The elves were surely going to attack, but that was too chaotic and they may involve themselves with unwanted trouble, but to the eyes of the arch-wizards, this situation a few measly human pulling tricks on each other. Orga, however, was pale as she saw the coming force being trampled down by the mammoths. There was no room for negotiation with Alina as it seemed. A victory of this scale was just too overwhelming as Winterhold was suffering no losses at all. Thankfully for her side, she didn't lose that many men and her troops were all following only her orders. Hey, beautiful, up for a hike? Suddenly and out of nowhere, a voice called for Orga. She looked behind to see a familiar silver-haired face with handsome features and a large sword on his shoulder. For sure's sake, Brahm, how can you be here? Orga recognized Brahm of Johanna. The two of them were fellow mercenaries. Me? I am guarding the boss. Winterhold really pay a lot of money, you see. You should have come and worked with Boss John. He pays better than the Bretons and the Imperials, I tell you. The boss. Orga's eyes narrowed as she looked behind Brom. Johnhild Firemane is here? A smile formed on her face. Oh, wait. I see that look on your face. You want to go after the boss? Sounds like the best way to negotiate with that woman from Winterhold. You mean the lady boss? Come on. You made the worst 2 enemies in your years. Turn around and flee. Best action you will ever take. Look, I was hired to protect this road. Your call. If you pass me, you'll get killed by John Dare. I think I like the odds. Surely not worse than being stomped down by a damn mammoth. I tell you what's worse than being stomped down by a mammoth. Having a damn Daedric Titan chase you to the demise of your warband. Been there. Not good. Move aside, Brom. Sigh. So it begins. The 2 mercenaries seemed to have a history of rivalry between them. Brom was looking to Orga's scary face with ease as his Daedric band was summoned in the span of a few seconds. 300 Nords against 300 Dremora. As they were about to clash, the mountain shook. The sky darkened and the air thinned. Something was not right. The battle stopped. The Nords and the Elves and the others all looked towards the direction of the beak between Azura's Shrine and Mount Anther, only to see a beam of light forming between heaven and earth. John was on the move. Chapter 390, The Battle of Winterhold, 7, Ethereal Tribulation. Big thanks to at Darius Thomas for the gift, and also at Greenbowie 676. From chaos to more chaos, that's how the Battle of Winterhold turned out to be. There were too many fronts now. The first and the largest was at the gates of Winterhold. The attackers that swarmed in were all repelled back, and Alina's plan was to devastate the power of the other dark clans to the extreme, so that she can dismantle them later one by one with ease. The second front was the War Mammoth unit against the new reinforcements coming from the direction of Wayward Pass. Alina's plot was to drag those ones in the back as reinforcements with false news. The entirety of Team Zero was to focus all its resources on that to happen. The War Mammoth unit was completely her idea and not a thing that John came with. Maybe she drew some inspiration of John's devices, but that idea couldn't be done if Jarl Skald of Dawnstar didn't drive the giants off towards Winterhold. The Firemans negotiated with the giants and reached an arrangement to buy the orphan mammoths. For a mammoth to be orphaned is for its owner to die. A mammoth and a giant would stick together as partners for their whole lives, and the giant bloodline in the Firemane also had the same quality with the 9 guardian totem beasts rather than mammoths. The orphan mammoths were a great addition to the Dare Corps, since no clan can reason with the giants as good as the Firemans. Wulfur rode his mammoth and directed it to chase the deserters of the Alliance's army. The reinforcements of the Alliance crushed by half under the feet of the mammoths and got pincered between the defenders of Sarthal and the ones following the War Mammoth unit. Now, everything was working well for Winterhold as it flexed all its military power to the extreme. And now to the third front. At the northern shore of Winterhold, a band of 2,000 cavalrymen landed on the snowy shore with haste bearing the red banner of the Wolf, the High King's troop in Skyrim's first army, the Army of Solitude. High King Torrig was personally at the forefront of his force, charging directly towards Sarthal. On his right was his Housecarl Balgir Bearclaw, his court wizard Sybil Stentor, his Thane Bryling, and his steward Falk Firebeard. The ride was moving swiftly to the east, wishing to catch a glimpse of Winterhold before it is too late. Ahoy! Riders coming ahead. One of the scouts on the lead called. Don't tell me, deserters from Winterhold? Torrig was ready for some bad news, but that seemed like the worst. The scout came back as fast as he could. Looks like trouble. They are hostiles. These words weren't assuring which side was this is. The soldiers of any defeated army would turn into monsters pillaging and raiding any travelers on their way for the sake of provisions and loot to escape further. Ready for clash. Torrig readied his men to face some resistance, hoping to capture one of those deserters and inquire about Winterhold. A few seconds later, runners appeared on the end of vision with a cloud of fine snow chasing them, The grim appearance on their faces and their screams made the hearts of the men of Solitude sink. Something was clearly wrong. Those who were swallowed by the cloud of fine snow gave off pitiful dying shrieks accompanied by loud stomps. The horses grew restless as it approached, and the runners didn't even bother Winter Solitude's men. To their surprise, the cloud of fine snow stopped in front of them and started to settle. The powerful aura coming from it was surely something unnatural. What the men saw first were large curved tusks bearing scary marks and armed with large blades, each then a large trunk of a mammoth, then a body of a full-grown one. The mammoth seemed to be in a foul mood, yet it stood its ground and groaned at the riders. It clearly wasn't considering them friendly. Well, who do we have here? If it isn't High King Torg himself. A voice called out to the High King from the mammoth's back. The idea was kinda unimaginable, but as soon as the people raised their heads, they saw a large man sitting on top of the mammoth's head. He was holding a large war pike and looked down at them with cold, murderous eyes. This is Wulfr of Winterhold, Thane Johnhild's right hand. Falk Firebeard was well informed with faces. Greetings. We are amidst a battle, so didn't have the time to prepare a welcome parade. What brings the High King to our humble town? Wulfr's language provoked the king's men greatly. Torg didn't mind Wulfr's hostility and replied, "We are here to aid Winterhold. 2,000 cavalrymen are with me." Wulfr nodded. John said that we might have some unexpected allies, but I didn't think Solitude would be one. This way. Wulfr turned the mammoth the other way, but his words echoed deep in the king's head. John said, "Wait, you spoke with Thane Johnhild? Is he here?" Torg rode forward right away. You will see soon enough. The third front where High King Torg came to reinforce Winterhold surprised Wulfr, but the bigger surprise was on the king's side. Winterhold was faring much better than he ever expected. Thane Johnhild Firemane may be officially the strongest man in Winterhold, but that only if people ignored the forces supporting him. He had the full backing of the Firemane as their son and the Moonblades as their son-in-law and the college as a great asset. This sure puts a few powerhouses on John's side. King Torg's plan was to stop the bloodshed, but that was already too late, and anyone in the state of Winterhold won't hand over the victory they gained for negotiations. Right now, the best action was to calm down the vigor of Winterhold and get a grasp of how could they repel such an alliance away. A king's first duty, after all, is to balance all the forces to keep the ship afloat. South to King Torg, the fourth front was much more active and bloody. Another unexpected reinforcements of another 2,000 cavalrymen came all the way through the Wayward Pass chasing the reinforcements of the alliance, then diverted their direction and met face to face with the Thalmor forces that didn't budge off its place. Those riders were all Nordic raiders carrying the blue banner of the bear under the lead of none other than the most charismatic leader in Skyrim, Jarl Ulfric Stormcloak. Send those elves to oblivion? Skyrim's for the Nords. Sovngarde. Taking advantage of the high ground to empower their charge, the Nord raiders descended on the elves out of nowhere. Nords. Kill them. Filthy humans. Your kind will be eradicated. One had to hand it down for the high elven warriors of Somerset. Each and every one of them was a fierce combatant with many years of experience. Unlike the humans who had the quantity, the high elves had the quality. They coped with the situation right away. Shields, swords, and spells were what the elves usually fought with, all in light plate elven armor, giving them the edge over all manners of battlefields. The elves valued their life and always pursued immortality. Their lives were what mattered above all else, so when the Nords wore padded armor and reinforced armor with a little to do with plates, the elves were always fully equipped. The shock charge of Ulfric Stormcloak was absorbed right away. Still, if there was someone who can deal with the elves on every situation, this man should be none other than Ulfric Stormcloak. Fussaroda. Jarl Ulfric shouted the elves in his way, making a large hole in their force and pushing the charge forward, once again reaching another climax. There was an old guide in cheap armor right behind Ulfric. This man had a katana blade to his side and kept his eyes narrowed as he checked through the Thalmor force. Once his eyes landed on a robed justiciar, He jumped off his horse and moved at a speed unimaginable to his age, reaching the side of the justiciar in a second, beheading him right away. Elvish dogs. They always die fast. Ulfric's horse stopped beside the man, and Ulfric looked at him, smiling wryly. They die fast because you kill them like that. Seems like age hasn't caught up to your touch at all. Fultame the Fearless. Bah. Leave me to my killing, lad, and I'll leave you to yours. Didn't you have some grudge to settle? Fultame cussed at Ulfric and moved like a phantom once again. Aye, Ulfric said as he looked deep into the Thalmor camp. There were 11 exceptionally powerful auras behind the force, yet in a certain tent, there were two. One of them was very familiar to Ulfric. Elenwen, roll over here. Ulfric called for Elenwen with strong resentment. Not long after, a beautiful high-elven mature woman appeared from a tent with a slightly mocking smile on her arrogant golden face. Oh, if it isn't dear Ulfric, what can I do for you, old friend? Cut the crap, woman, and bright out your sword or axe or whatever you swing. Ulfric jumped down from his horse and, throwing his spear down, and pulled out his axe. Rickford. Elenwen's face was ever so passive and calm. Miss me already? It wasn't that long since we met last time, if I remember. Still, how is yo? Shut your trap, woman. My oh my, still the young boy I met all those years long ago. Can't get over me yet? Ulfric and Elenwen walked to each other, and the two forces took clear to place for their leaders to duel. Ulfric's Rickford met Elenwen's elven exquisite blade in a strong clash that pushed Elenwen away. Ulfric took a small breath and adjusted his lunges to a humming aura of frigid frost around him. A strong shockwave of power made the normal soldier stumble around him. Elenwen didn't unleash an aura or anything like that. Her magicka inside her boy started to burn, and she cast Empower on herself. High elves always looked down on the art of the battle spirit, saying it is alien magic out of their motherland, brought by the Akaviri hearsay. They never practiced any aura. The duel between Elenwen and Ulfric was swift and clean. The two seemed well aware of the other's skill set and countered the counters of each other. Ulfric waved his axe in rounds, trying to distract Elenwen, who kept a safe distance and locked eyes with Ulfric. As he smirked and waved his axe by the right, his hands pulled a sword by the left. Elenwen merely stepped out of range, but Ulfric's aura chased her as if the blades had auras of its own. She, however, merely cast a ward to block it cleanly. Ulfric's foot was dug in the snow, and with a kick, the soft snow flew upwards towards Elenwen's face. Her expressions looked natural, but Ulfric could detect her annoyance and urgency. As long as I keep you dogs away from Sarthal, there is no danger on the city, as it seemed. Don't overestimate yourself, my dear. We don't need to march at Winterhold whatsoever. Oh, really? You are here hunting those mammoth, or something? Heh. You seem as surprised as us. Winterhold has no actual power to speak of other than their advanced magical technology. In the face of 10 arch-wizards, do you think that will mean anything? 10? Come on, dear. You know the drill. Let the Nords kill each other, and the rest will be ours to scrap. Isn't that what you people are good at? Ulfric seemed annoyed by the fact. 10 arch-wizards from the Dominion was something that he failed to foresee. Now there is some real trouble. If it is him alone, he can face one arch-wizard all for himself, which is Elenwen. Calculating how many masters in Winterhold, only few can stop the rest of the 9. It seems that the battle on Sarthal's Gate is almost over too. Look at those Nords riding mammoths like the savages they are. Did they ever think that such petty creatures will stop the power of the arcane? As Elenwen said so, the 9 auras behind her started to move. They all rose in the air like immortals. Ulfric's frown grew uglier. He didn't think that the Thalmor would pull such a large force out. This can be said as 10% of the Thalmor fighting force all gathered in one place, if one overlooked the whole Aldmeri Dominion. Elenwen. So this reaches nowhere again? Exactly. You won't get your vengeance, so get over it. But as a gesture of benevolence, we won't touch the Jarl of Eastmarch. She flew up in the air with the other arch-wizards. Ulfric was pissed to the max. Such arrogance in front of him was something he expected from his old enemy Elenwen, but to always end like this. How many times he met her in arms and ended up being humiliated, or so-called spared by their elven benevolence. He knew what they wanted and knew that they know him too well. They maybe actually created him as the man he is today. Still, he can never help it. His arrogance told him one thing, and that when the time comes, he would crush every plot and plan the elves put in his way no matter what. Yet it always ends like this. He never cornered them or paused as a threat. They always led him to his devices whenever and provoke his pride more. Damn you! Ulfric cussed as he picked a spear from the ground and intended to strike down those arrogantly flying elves looking down on him. But it was then when everything in the world stopped. Not by force, but by their will. The sky darkened, the air thinned. The Mundus itself was angry. What is going on? Was on everyone's mind. Not just on Ulfric's front, as he and the arch-wizards of the Thalmor were about to engage in another bloody conflict. It was on the third front where Wulfr was leading High King Torrig towards Sarthal. It was on the second front where the Firemans chased off the Alliance soldiers on the Mammoth. It was on the first front where Alina and the others pushed back the attackers. Alina looked to the south, and her eyes opened wide as a large beam of light formed between heaven and earth. Tink, tink, tink. A loud metallic smites of a hammer started to echo in the region, and somehow the world itself reacted. The Mundus cried hard. It wasn't natural. It was against nature. It was a violation of the rules. A power beyond sense, a force beyond understanding. Alina realized that John's was his own move now. The ones who realized the nature of the change right after Alina were the High Elven arch-wizards other than Elenwen, who was of a younger generation. Their expressions grew pale as they could tell what was that. Goodness! The Mundus itself, the binds of the Mundus are shaking. It can't be. How in the world can this happen here? Who has such power? We must stop that. Now. It was a phenomenon the elves sought for through all their races, and few managed to achieve such a height in the olden history. A way not lost but unreachable. That strong beam of energy was nothing other than a power falling from the heavens when something defies the heavenly order. A phenomenon that can echo through the heaven, Etherius, the earth, Nirn, and the hell, Oblivion. The realm, Mundus, itself has many seals to stop such a phenomenon, but when someone reaches a certain level of power, the Mundus retaliates for it. Was created to suppress that by none other than Lorcan himself. Whenever the ethereal tribulations appears, the world topple. Last time it was seen with the Omsavai, Dagoth Uar, and the Nerevarine. Now it appears in Skyrim. Just what is John up to? The 9 high elves charged towards the beam of light. Alina jumped off the wall. John Rad, Tyr, Hilda, and Sigurd intercepted their way. Tormund and Jenna joined. Nurina teleported to the base of the mountain. The true battle of Winterhold, the battle of the powerhouses, was beginning. Chapter 391. The Battle of Winterhold, 8 and 9. So there was a wedding in the family. Sorry for not informing anyone beforehand. I am going to add multiple chapters to each other so that I can manage the workload and do things faster. Each part will be more than 2,000 words, so you're getting your chapters. Part 1. As the battle was starting, a single young man climbed the mountain top between Mount Anther and the Shrine of Azura. He was clad in a black, wearing an expressionless face, and observing the morning sky silently. He stopped at the not-so-flat top and checked it out. Nice spot. His calm face was really an opposite to his active, cheerful nature. He carried a hint of calmness that can only be seen in a man about to do something rather dangerous. You sure about this? Shadow's voice echoed in his head. Yes, it is the best course of action. You think things will get better this way? You may be right, I know, but you will open yourself to new dangers and threats that I don't really want you to go through. Don't worry, I have preparations, John said as he turned to the Shrine of Azura's direction. And friends in high places, you trust Azura? You trust her. I am a different story. Trust is not the word I'd pick anyway. I trust that she is true to her desires, and it would be a good distraction until the time comes. You said yourself, after today, everything will change. I wish you luck then. John nodded and looked far to Sarthel. His thoughts varied between his lovers, his family, and his accomplishments. All the eggs important to him are all gathered in that one basket. Nefertiti, Odakuro, Zykil. He called for 3 names. The first appeared on his shoulder as a black cat, the second was a large-boned samurai, and the third was a gigantic being with the appearance of an extremely black evil Wyrm, or rather, a Daedric Titan. Human. Mas Tur. Mortal. John didn't turn to any one of the 3 and spoke after a long breath. Zykil, fitting in your new body? Yes, mortal. I feel much better compared to last time. I learned how to keep this body flying now. Pathetic. Nefertiti cussed at him. Tisk. Zykil, who became a Daedric Titan, glared at her. She only spoke my mind, John said. Oh, the Daedric Titan started to shrink in a gloomy mood. Listen very well. I want you to go down there and keep yourself hidden between mountains. Your job is to protect the commander of Winterhold's forces, my woman Alina. Consider it done, mortal. Zykil stood up with his Daedric Titan body and started walking down the path. Use your wings, dimwit, John shouted. Oh, yes. Zykil stood still for a while before figuring out how to use his wings again. Are you sure about that idiot, Human? Nefertiti asked. Despite the fact that the one on the wheel is a dimwit, he has the body of a Daedric Titan. Just like giving a baby the body of a muscular adult. Expect him to smash things too well. Also, it will take him a while to figure out himself after going through that experience. Being reborn is nothing easy. Of course, Human should know best. Enough with wasting time, let's get to it. John took out 2 items from the cube. They were the Elder's Staff, Pride and Greed. He used Pride to make the atmosphere on the peak a bit foggy and handed it to Nefertiti and also gave her the cube. He then reshaped Greed into an anvil and made Wrath. Fix it to the ground. The 5 of us, Greed, Wrath, Pride, Nefertiti and I are all connected with soul. Nefertiti and I by a mystic connection, so I see her as equal while the sins are what I enchanted with parts of my very living soul, so I see them as my extension. The following process is going to cause a large change to the 5 of us, but it will be temporary. Even though I don't need any consent from you all, I want our will to become stronger as parts of me and extensions of my will. John gave a ceremonial speech just to put his heart and mind to it, but the others started to express their opinions. Wrath's eyes started to gleam in red more and more, conveying his fired-up state of mind by a hearty roar. Pride shone in golden glimmer, expressing its high and mighty nature. Greed quivered and shook, ready to take all that John will give him. As long as the change doesn't touch my royal fluff. Nefertiti changed into her child form and said so. Haha, that's assuring. John laughed. He then looked at Nefertiti and spoke. Let's get right with it. She manipulated the cube and took out an item which was Wraithgord. John put the single Dwemer gauntlet on his right. The next items were both Sunder and Keening, which went to the right and left hand. John looked at the 3 artifacts that were some of the finest things ever made by the lost race of the dwarves. With a swift move, John smote with Sunder on Greed. Tink. A loud metallic sound echoed through the place. Damn, John exclaimed. Looks like Greed loves it. Pride. Increase the power of the fog spell around us and not let a sound out. The Elder's Staff did what John wanted and made the area completely covered in mist and blocked all sounds from leaking out. Nefertiti, when I give the signal, starting passing those things to me. Okay, whenever you're ready. John closed his eyes and calmed his state of mind for a second, then opened his eyes again and nodded. Now? As soon as he said that, Nefertiti took out an item and put it on the anvil of Greed. Without any more waiting, John smote with Sunder on that item. A cloud of red energy overflowed in the surroundings and started to make anomalies happen in the space like red lightning cracks, forming out of nowhere and strange shapes and wills in the red cloud struggling with each other, and even voices were heard through the red cloud. The item Nefertiti took out was a heart stone, one of those ones that can be mined from Solstheim. Heart stones are pieces of the Red Mountain that carry some residual power from the Heart of Lorcan, the world-grade artifact that got the Red Mountain formed around it. Heart stones are merely some earth stained with power from the Heart of Lorcan. John knew that for a fact, and he could never break those heart stones to cultivate from them directly. Now, with the power of Sunder, a specific amount of energy entered the stone, trapping the energy and chased the energy of the heart out. John switched from Sunder to keening and passed the blade through that red cloud, causing it to react to the dagger's blade. The energy cloud was flayed by keening. Arg! John groaned as he felt something sweet coming through his throat. The energy of the heart stone was passed through keening to Wraithguard, which absorbed the wild effect of the energy and let the pure power flow into John's channels. John could stand no more and fell on his knees with his teeth clenching to each other, about to break from the pain. Nefertiti almost panicked, but she looked at Odakuro, and with her will, it supported John up as she took out a bar of wood and stuck it between John's teeth. "You can't stop now, Homan. If you stop, everything is lost." As she said so, some sense returned back to John, and he struggled to keep himself standing. He looked at her with a pale face. His body was burning up from the outside and freezing from the inside. His soul was in a very active state as it got a large and violent amount of that alien energy that came all at once. He felt he was being torn apart by an invisible hand, but he couldn't say a word. After all, this was all his idea. He had a plan, and he must stick to it to the very end, or everything will truly be all to waste. What he is doing now is not some sort of cultivating, even though it followed the same principle. It was something much more different and way more violent. Nefertiti took out another heart stone, and John looked at it bitterly. He reluctantly smote with Sunder once again and flayed the energy with keening. This time, his whole arm became numb and he could barely move it. With the third heart stone, John couldn't endure his own clothes. He was dressed in some thick winter clothing with a large armored girdle belt. John let out some of that energy out, and the clothes on his body all exploded away, leaving only the armored girdle belt. His damaged body was exposed, half pale, half normal, even though his muscles were still in good shape. He looked like one of them barbarian warriors in that girdle, which had some cloth still hanging to it. Tink, tink, tink. With each smite, John was withering in pain and suffering. It kept going for maybe 2 hours straight as he ground too many heart stone, and his face was carrying some serious hints of tiredness. Just as he was about to stagger and fall once again, he felt a sudden change. The energy he accumulated were too much to be trapped in by one mortal soul. John was about to puke blood from the pain. That pain, however, stopped as he felt a different feeling surrounding him. The world was rejecting to let him gain more energy than what he already gained. Finally, it was what he aimed for all along, the point of violation to the rules of the Mundus. One more step forward only meant that the world will retaliate for sure, no matter if John was one of those paragon breed mortals called the heroes or not. John finally could put on a wide grin as he waved Sunder at the last heart stone put in front of him. Tink. It was then. The energy John accumulated was too much and too wild. The Mundus had a lot of binds to stop such an event from happening, as it is the way Lorcan and Magnus designed it to be. The sky darkened. The air thinned. The wind stopped. The clouds above the mountaintop formed a typhoon-like circle, and through it, a beam of pure wild energy descended towards John and his soul fragments inhabiting Nefertiti, greed, pride, and wrath. The energy beam broke through the world without touching anything with harm, but that wasn't the situation towards John and his soul fragments. The beam was too fierce and descended on the 5 of them with the intention to stop them from attaining power beyond what is allowed. John watched the shining light fall towards and gritted his teeth. He then raised up his right hand, which had Wraithguard, and met the descending beam of light with his fist. Break! John couldn't let a single strand of his magical energy out as his body and the beam of light clashed. He can't let go of that power as he already came this far. The whole weight of the beam pushed John down on his left knee, yet his arm was still rising. Sunder and Keening also fell on the ground. On the other hand, Nefertiti and the three sins were being suppressed by the light too. Nefertiti used her shadow magic to protect herself. Odakuro knelt in front of his master with its katana, stabbing to the ground, resisting the suppression of light. The shadow ether was a large amount of dense shadow energy, so it had a good affinity to resist the light, and the elder staff was doing better than others as it was radiating its golden light to fight off the world's suppression. In truth, only 10% of the suppression fell on them and 90% was on John. The heavenly tribulation, or rather the ethereal tribulation, has begun. Part 2. 9 figures dashed through the skies of Winterhold towards the base of the light beam atop the mountaintop between Mount Anther and the Shrine of Azura. Their intentions were not of pure malice as they came, but to stop an imminent disaster. 9 archwizards were something equal to the worth of 9 weapons of mass destruction, all focused on one goal. This power, they are archwizards. Alina was shocked senseless and turned to Nurina. Curses. I thought they were not that powerful at the very best, but this is too much. Didn't your spies tell anything? Even Nurina's face twisted. We knew there are powerful masters among the enemies, but not archwizards. The two were worried sick at the moment, but a single distress signal to the other powerful masters on the side of Winterhold was enough for an immediate response. Hilda, Jonrad, Tyr, and Sigurd moved away from the first front and dashed towards the mountaintop where John is. Nurina followed, accompanied by Tormund and Jenna Firemane. This match wasn't even good. The strongest 7 on the side of Winterhold against 9 archwizards. The College of Winterhold could afford Savos Aran and 3 other archwizards, but only in the case of Winterhold being broken into. Alina looked at the situation getting out of her hand, and her heart sank. She looked around for any more cards in her sleeves, then noticed the large dwarven ballistas. Angium, use the ballistas. Shoot the elves down. She shouted. Angium, Sveikin, and Trudvar, who were leading the first front under Alina, left their units to their seconds in command and manned the ballista on the low towers. They ran like beasts and climbed up the walls with their hands until they reached the war machines. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. 3 ballista bolts were shot with absolute accuracy towards the flying mages. One must be thankful that the levitation spells are not as good as real flying, else the situation would have become much worse by the second. Thankfully, the ballista's range reached the flying mages with ease and caused their formation to break loose. Humph! Insolent humans. An archwizard felt offended by Angium's bolt and decided to incinerate the human by a fire spell. The response came from Alina as she slammed her hand on a certain stone tablet on the wall, and some pillar-like objects rose on the wall. These objects were strange pillars with orbs on top of them. Once the spell got closer to the range, the pillars shout out lightning spells, completely nullifying the flame spell cast by the archwizard. This was one of the Tesla Tower functions. As soon as the archwizard saw that, a vein grew on his forehead. Insolent dogs. Why don't you just die? The short-tempered archwizard couldn't accept the humiliation of his spell being broken and was about to go on rampage. Stop it. Look, they have caught up to us. One of his colleagues pulled him away. The 9 archwizards felt the threat that the 7 masters who were approaching paused and decided to give a fast fight. 7 of us can hold them, the other 2 should eliminate the threat. The masters were preparing to meet each other on one front, and it started to get rather serious. The first front lost the support of the masters, but the Winterhold was already overwhelming the enemies and sent them on the run as a chase started while a few troopers were left to defend the wall. Alina seemed anxious watching the disadvantage of the 7 versus 9 masters. The 7 masters of Winterhold stood in front of the mountain with their weapons drawn, while the 9 archwizards remained in the air. Now, attack! The 2 sides moved at the same time, as powerful spells and waves of magic power formed deformation in reality itself. Space started to crack under the strong exchanges of magicka and the heavenly tribulation that was going on the top of the mountain. Lady Boss, can't we use the tower once again? Trudvar asked. No, the reactor is exhausted and our people are out there. One misstep and we may even harm John. The situation was chaotic, but Alina was already focusing on all the fronts with her future vision. She kept gazing at how the battle was unfolding on the Master's front. The disadvantage was clear. John Rad was handling a strong fire mage on his own. Haha, I read the reports about you. Human, you are the so-called King of Ash. Your flame looks mediocre if you ask me. If you can run your mouth this much, you at least can show something better than this blind duck spells you are casting. Humph. Die, you fool. I humbly decline. John Rad was disadvantaged in terms of energy, but had stronger firepower. A race of time to him, and a race of endurance to his opponent. On the other side, there was Tormund and Jenna against two arch-wizards. Tormund carried the clan's sword, Graham, and his round shield made of ebonwood and behemoth scales, while Jenna carried a long black staff with a spearhead. Those lousy old humans. Think you can face me and my brother when we go as duo? One of the arch-wizards spoke with haughtiness. Oh, husband. It seems those two elves are some sort of duo fighters too. Oh, wife. You seem energetic all of a sudden. We indeed haven't faced any duo fighters since a very long time ago. Don't waste your breath on those two, brother. Just kill. The second arch-wizard cast a fast spell towards Jenna sneakily. The spell landed and made a big clash with some dust rising, but as it settled, Jenna and Tormund appeared to be unharmed as Tormund's shield was covering both of them with ease. Jenna hid behind Tormund and raised her spear staff from the shield's side. By a whim, a red, chain lightning spell was cast from the spear towards the two arch-wizards. One of them was about to repel it with a ward, but his instincts told him to not even come in contact with that spell. He hurriedly backed off. Be careful, brother. That woman is not a mage. She is a warlock, or rather, a witch. A witch and her protector. What a troublesome duo. Foo-foo-foo. Jenna seemed to be amused as her identity as a dark magic user was exposed. Tormund gave a tired sigh as he prepared to tank for his wife as she attacks. On another side, Tyr was fighting silently with another arch-wizard. The two of them moved like wind and disappeared like shadows. Being an arch-wizard doesn't only mean being a spellcaster. Arch-wizards can be scary warriors such as Tyr's match. The two were both assassins and warriors with a lot of magical ability. They appeared and disappeared as they pleased and laid a lot of traps to each other, but their fight was simply going to take forever. Nurina was focused on a magical clash with a very old high elf. The two skillfully manipulated the elements and put down a show of absolute arcane. I heard about this way in manipulating magic long ago. It seems you are from the followers of one of Lord Divaith Fyr's students. How strange to see one of you here, or rather, how not strange. Is that an insult? No, not at all. You dark elves are travelers by nature, and Lord Divaith Fyr is one of the best travelers, if not the best known on Nirn. Sadly, we don't see eye to eye, and who am I to voice an opinion against the Grand Archmagus of this realm? A resentment against Grandmaster Divaith, then. How unexpected. Well, the unexpected thing is to see a girl like you from a great line of mages taking a cursed human child as her student and child. Linking such a troublesome kid to the great line of Divaith Fyr students. This child is getting scarier by the second. Don't talk about John, dying old thing. Foo-foo-foo. As Nurina was exchanging insults calmly with her old opponent, a reckless fight was happening on the other side. Shit, how can that woman jump the far? Don't ask me. You two need to just get away from here. Three arch-wizards were locked down by Hilda on her own. The bloody Hilda, famed for her bloodthirsty fighting style, was akin to a Death Reaper on the field. She moved in a red beeline formed by her aura and hair, then struck down with her axe towards the elves. Two of the three were supposed to sneak towards John's location, but Hilda was fixed on making them run around like a lioness chasing a herd of animals. Leave that crazy woman to me. You take the long turn. One of the mages said as he started to cast many illusions everywhere. Numerous clones of him appeared all around Hilda, and all moved around at the same time. Hilda stopped and looked around, but she wasn't any good with magic, so she couldn't tell illusion from reality. Still, it was all the same. Die, you bastards! She waved her axe in a whirlwind style, annihilating all the clones 4 meters around her. She then looked around and jumped up high, landing on a certain clone. Found you. I can smell your fear. She waved her axe down to behead the elf, but the clone turned into nothing once it got killed. Please, woman, give an arch-wizard some credit. Whatever clone it is, I can be it. Even if you find me, I can still move to another clone. The elf said as he tried to make her mind get jumbled with magic for her to lose vision. Once he made sure that her senses are disabled, he and the clones attacked with daggers all at the same time. As Hilda was about to get stabbed in all her vitals, she turned around so fast, facing the right elf clone with an expressionless face. The elf was too close to Hilda, and he instantly panicked. He jumped away and hid among his clones once again. A strange cold feeling appeared on the side of his neck, and he touched it to check. He found a thin line of blood coming from a scratch on his neck. Looking back at Hilda again, he found a small knife in her hand. What kind of monster is she? He was this close to death to the point that he felt a strange thrill of danger invading his thoughts. This battle can't be easily decided as the two were the worst match of each other. Sigurd Moonblade was standing silently facing another arch-wizard. The two moved not a step or utter not a word as they kept looking at each other still. The two looked very exhausted. This wasn't a normal battle as it seemed the two were fighting mentally. When mages and warriors reach a certain level of experience, they can completely invade their opponent's thoughts and pry on their moves. The two were like that, fighting a battle that cannot be seen or happen. An endless struggle, conflicting tactics. The 7 fighters on each side put their all in a duel of life and death, pushing and pulling the boundaries of their fighting styles to cope with the excellently matched or badly matched opponents. Amidst the fight, 2 of the 9 arch-wizards managed to sneak away from the intercepting forces. We can't waste time. Once we get rid of the threat, we should come back and annihilate those opponents. Let's hurry then. They were charging towards the peak where John was as fast as they could, but unknown to them. Another opponent was drawing nearer. Ha! 2 gleaming blades fell from the sky towards the 2 arch-wizards. Soul Render and Blood Scythe were down to claim lives, but the arch-wizards dodged with ease. What now? One of them spoke annoyingly. To the side, a flying creature was approaching, and on its back, a girl with long black hair and red angry eyes. Her long, beautiful face froze the air in the lungs for a second, but the old arch-wizards were not easily swayed. It is that human girl. Prepare the protection spell. In front of Alina, who rendered an arch-wizard to the ground with only her angry stare, the rest can't be careless anymore. 2. Water Screen. Ward spells formed in front of the wizards to block any other stare from Alina. Lochther. Maneuver. Alina said as she took out a lever-action crossbow with anti-magic bolts. Wicked Girl. Trickster. The 2 elves wouldn't want to come in contact with those bolts. They were strong, but anti-magic enchantments would take a lot of magicka to dispel. Alina shot a few bolts as Lochther circled around the arch-wizards who kept dodging. Get that griffin. We need to capture such a rare breed, and that girl too. The 2 arch-wizards were not even pressured by someone with Alina's level. Her actions were merely child's play to them. One of them cast telekinesis and forced Lochther down carefully, while the other tried to cast paralyze on Alina midair. Fat chance. Alina abandoned Lochther and jumped on her own, pulling her swords back with telekinesis. Without any delay, her inner casting technique started working on Frost Steps spell. Icicles of frost appeared midair as she stepped on them, dodging any hostile spell on her own. Damn, she is skill. The male arch-wizard admired Alina's movements. Just shoot her down before she used those cursed eyes. The female arch-wizard cussed at him as she started to bind Lochther down. Alina approached the mage with haste, putting the strength of her frost aura in her arms and waving her swords horizontally. The male arch-wizard simply waved his left hand and deflected the energy of her two blades on her, causing the swords to break away from her hands, and stretched his other hand to hold her from her head. Haha, be a good girl and come now. As a disgusting smile appeared on his face, Alina was already planning ahead. Her foot was right close to the arch-wizard, and somehow managed to print a rune spell under the elf's feet. He noticed, but it was already too late. The spell wasn't anything fancy. To hide the lethality of the rune, Alina used a simple teleportation spell that switched places between her and the male arch-wizard. Wait. He tried to look back hurriedly, but Alina was driving her kick in the man's groans. Arch-wizard nuts are still nuts, bastard. Using a vulgar language wasn't something Alina would do, but the situation called for it. As she managed to put the male arch-wizard down, she was assaulted by an angry female arch-wizard who jumped on her and tried to kill her bare-handed. You bitch! How dare you do that to my husband? Alina was struggling under the mysterious strength of the body of an arch-wizard. She barely held to the woman's wrists and quivered her words out. Sorry. His nuts were soft. John is bigger. Nuts. You crazy human bitch. Those were my husband's nuts. I'll make you wear them around your severed neck. Ah. The enraged women turned the fight from a battle to a catfight. The male arch-wizard on the back held his nuts with teary eyes. Stop talking about my nuts. Hold her down. The arch-wizard wife shouted at her husband as she pushed Alina towards him and took out a long Aldmarai saber. She was about to wave it at Alina, but Lochthar broke free from his binds and flew towards the woman with a raging screech. Wife, watch out. The male arch-wizard pulled his wife away from Lochthar's way and was about to bind the griffin, but some change happened too fast. A gigantic shadow appeared in the sky and descended too fast towards Alina and the female arch-wizard. Everyone on the battlefield noticed the large creature that appeared from the mountain. No. The mortal said not to let anyone touch you. I am screwed. Hey you, come here. Not sure what they saw. A strange demonic-looking creature larger than any giant with large bat wings and big evil draconic head descended over Alina. He looked at the female arch-wizard, and its head descended on her in a second. Not sure how, the creature opened its mouth and swallowed the female arch-wizard in one go. No, wifey. The male arch-wizard almost broke into madness when his wife was swallowed like that. Alina was still looking at the creature with frozen blood, as well as the other masters from the Thalmor and Winterhold side. Oblivion. Even Ulfric Stormcloak and Elenwen, who were battling to the west, saw the large creature and seized their action immediately. Well, I'll be damned. The sight of Zykel was completely unexpected, more than the war mammoth unit, the cannons, the falling wall, and the Tesla towers. Maybe not as scary as the Soundless Zone and the heavenly tribulations happening at the mountaintop. The 7 masters of Winterhold retreated towards Alina, and the Thalmor masters retreated towards the elf arch-wizard, who just lost his wife. Zykel was right in between. He looked left and right, then figured out the situation. With a wave of his head, he spat out the female arch-wizard, which was in a haggard state. Sorry about the sudden interference. I don't think I should care about mortals fighting each other to oblivion, but the mortal told me to keep that female mortal safe. No one comes near her for the moment. Zykel seemed overprotective about Alina. On the other hand, the arch-wizards helped the woman that was just spat by the Daedric Titan, covered in a layer of slimy saliva. Zykel noticed her too. Sorry about that. This body is still not that good with oral jobs. At least you ended up without being eaten. The female arch-wizard looked at Zykel with the resentful and silent look. She then raised her finger and pointed towards the Daedric Titan. Kill. Kill it. Chapter 392, Above Mundus. Important. The following content is partially a fanfiction but based on my own speculations, and a lot of unlicensed content written by former writers to the Elder Scrolls series. Some content is also completely made up from the bone, but at least based on some thin lore. Enjoy Heartsuit. Whoa, look at that. Showered by the beam of ethereal light, John's body withstood the suppression of the mundus by its sheer willpower while his consciousness traveled to another place. It was completely unexpected and unforeseen, but it was a welcome change in events. John kept looking around and smiled wryly. So the ethereal tribulations are not just about suppressing the soul from gaining enough energy, but also to test the mind. This is brilliant. The wisdom of Lorcan is vast. In mere 4 years, John hoarded enough magic and knowledge to rival many great names in the history of this world, and now he reached a certain step that was really breathtaking. Realizations arrived one after the other, and many secrets of the world started to reveal itself to him. He broke the taboo and now ate the forbidden fruit, the knowledge and wisdom that formed the essence of the binds of the mundus. The creation started with the counterparts Anu and Padme, whose souls are Anwiel and Sithiz, and their offspring were Auriel and Lorcan, and by the existence of time, others came forth. Now that elvish creation myth not far from the truth, if one put away all the discriminations against Lorcan and the original spirits that followed him, but there were lost traces of the story that John could pick from where he stands. The original spirits were all powerful, terrible, and mighty. Born with such powers, they shouldn't have deserved it from the beginning. Lorcan's scheme was to put them in the prison of mortality known as the mundus, and rather than being immortals, they can be mortals and have offspring of their own which may be better than their predecessors and gain the wisdom through growing from weakness. And thus, the original spirits were trapped. The mundus had many seals. Some were to suppress the energy or to set the power limit, while others were to set the mental limit, all placed to make the perfect trials of the royalty. Why a Daedric prince was called a prince, after all? The way of the royalty is the way to ascend from the mundus and an immortal spirit. By Chim, by Amaranth, by all the known way-walking methods, or even meditating the way, one can find a way to ascend the tower. One must understand many concepts and look through many angles at things. As such, the scene in front of John right now. He was standing among the stars. Atop of him was nothing but the dark space illuminated by those small dots. Beneath his feet, there was a large globe of blue oceans, large continents, and white clouds. On the near distance, there were 2 moons, and on the far distance, there was a sun surrounded by 9 globes, including the one beneath his feet. Such a thing. It makes sense, but it doesn't. Beneath his feet was Nirn, a planet that took the same position of Earth in the solar system with other planets, known by the names of the 9 imperial divines going around the sun. This scene is not an illusion or some sort of dream. This is John's astral projection reaching a height never recorded or passed down, showing the real truth of the world. Not what was always passed down as a Nirn in the center with every planet at the sun going around it. Not the rumored hub of the wheel as it was passed down. It was just another dull planet. But was it really the case? The world may look like this in the eyes of a physical onlooker, but from a spiritual perspective, things looked completely different. The Eye of Magica, a spell John learned in the depth of Divaith Fyr's dungeon that let him take a glimpse at what lies beyond nature, was the key spell to take a good look at the true shape of the world. John closed his eyes and opened the third eye, which appeared like the insignia of an eye on his forehead. The scene was completely different. It was now the Nirn in the center and all going around it. I see. Ha ha ha. How smart. The world wasn't just as it was told it was. Just like a mortal, there were 2 versions of reality. The physical world and the metaphysical world. The physical world followed the rules of physics and astronomy, being shaped as a complete world based on an ideal cosmological basis. The metaphysical world was a different look to the world based on its spiritual structure, a knowledge that can be considered part of the secret of transcending. John's understanding of the case was swift and simple. He thought of it as radio frequency. Reality formed by time and space also has frequencies, and changing how the perception receives the signals of these frequencies is the secret of how to see the physical world and the metaphysical world. Why no one has never found out about this? Who said no one knew? It is just not necessary to tell. Magic is what mattered, and as far as magic was concerned, the metaphysical world is what mattered. Now, to break the rules of the mundus, One must be strong enough to do so and resist the world's suppression, but that's merely the first step. When Lorcan created the Mundus, he put limits and trials to those who want to return back to the immortal plane, and now was the mind trial. Above Nirn and around it, the other planes of the metaphysical world appeared clearly. A world of plains of flowers, a world of myriad rivers and mountains, a world of brass surface, and so on. Looking further, one could see more worlds out there. The metaphysical world may have mainly the 8 planes of the divines going around Nirn, but there was way more than that. Smaller planes here, and there were also part of this large mundus, so of which are small, and some are fairly large. Some are near and some are far. John looked directly at himself and realized how his manifestation looked like. It made him about to smile and cry at the same time, so bad. A small pebble. This was it. It looked weak, fragile, and needed a lot of protection. Was this all I am? A small pebble in this vast mundus? Realizing his existence, the current him that broke out of the suppression of the mundus was just a pebble. It was too tough to accept even for John. Sigh. Compared to these large planes over there, I am very untimely and premature existence. I should have waited at least to break from the mundus at a later stage. Maybe after the dragon frame realm when I form my spirit spark? Good grief. John walks the way through meditating and refining the magicka between Aetherius and Nirn. He is not the only one who did so, but his way is the most effective. All mages meditate in order to learn how to handle magicka for the first time in their lives. Each magical tome carries a hint on how to meditate and cast a spell, but John's unique method only revolves around meditating. It gave him the edge over many other before him. His pebble may grow larger one day from this premature state of his, yet he has already performed something incredible. He broke the first seal of the mundus and is about to break the second. The second test is to find the way up. Simply put, it is finding the way to the tower. Understanding the difference between the physical world and the metaphysical world is crucial and very important. Unlike Earth, Nirn is familiar with the metaphysical world, whose structure defies any cosmological sense, while Earth was familiar with the physical world, totally oblivious if there is a metaphysical world, or not in terms of science if the faiths and beliefs were overlooked. Accepting the fact that there are 2 worlds within one existence required a lot of mental burden to whoever takes the second test, but John is not the kind who would be burdened by such a fact. He is a reincarnator from a different world and spent all his life trying to study the new world he was thrown into. Seeing how the cosmos defied sense, John always believed that there is a secret behind the weird structure of the Orbis. Discovering the Shadow Realm and the Dragon Breaks made John understand that reality can be several and frequent like radio transmissions. Just finding that out is already too much for many of this world's inhabitants, even though anyone who reaches this point of existence is simply a mighty entity. Now to go further, one must find the way forward on his own. John wouldn't suffer by that one either. He looked at Nirn, understanding it is the center of the mundus, which is the hub of the Orbis. He turned around his pebble body freely and realized that he can move to some extent. He compared the other plane's positions with Nirn and arrived at a certain angle to his vision. It was too humongous to see such a thing this easily, but he knew what he was looking for. The Orbis is a wheel shaped like an O with 8 pillars as the Edric planes and 16 spurs as the Daedric planes. Seeing them all at one place was mentally burdening, and John felt exhausted, but he can at least find the missing piece for his vision to be complete. The sun over there, the hole tearing between Mundus and Aetherius through oblivion. The Magnus, it is called, or the Eye of the Dragon. As the sun aligned with the other planes in John's vision, a strong light overtook everything around him and he felt captured by it. The small pebble he has started to flow in a large stream of cosmological force until the scene turned stranger than before. The physical world is fixed and bound by the mundane laws, but the metaphysical world is not. It has 2 states, or rather 2 shapes. The Orbis, which is O, is the first shape, and then comes the Eye. The being rather than a structure, the flow of power and existence, and the power beyond all reach. The tower. The planes flowed, and so did the stars, as if a stream of fluid or a state of rising out of space and time. The pebble that John has looked closely to the large, I seeing no end to its height, for only those planes which are powerful rise up, with the small pitiful ones keep it down. Stars and planes entwine, some greater than others. Ones moved in the stream, and a few found their own way around it in serpentine moves. The base of the eye was most crowded, with many trying to find the way up, as if the large tower had a cone base made of large streams of planes. A pebble can't even measure to that. John only found the safest distance to feel the flow of the tower and to make a connection with its forces. He can't start the third test just yet, as the tower may zero-sum him. Him being a Dragonborn has no value in the tower. Being zero-summed is worse than death. It is the worst of all possibilities. It is being erased of existence and cast out of all memories. The third test is a bit too much compared to the first and the second, but reaching this point was enough. I am impressed. A voice reached out to John. Really? John replied. Indeed. What you did was truly admirable. Thank you, Shadow. A strange stream of light hovered around the pebble. Its identity was revealed to John right away. You are not trying the third gate? Shadow asked. Being here is more than enough. There is no need for hassle. I've got to maintain my position this far from the tower, else things won't look good for me. I am far too weak. Then? Then what? I am anticipating. Anticipating. Good choice. 10 minutes is all I can give you. 10 minutes is all I need. Chapter 393, Demigod. A lot of thanks to Derek Palm. He gets a ticket to Sovngarde. Winterhold's defenders overtook the northern field, and their axes and spears with shields formations were too fierce and viscous. Adapted to the snow and rocky battlefields, the Dare troopers used the boar formation to precisely curve through their enemies. In the south, where the attackers were rendered to defend themselves by the war mammoth unit, the Dare troopers used the testudo formation of the Imperial Legion, aka tortoise formation, with large wooden tower shields and javelins to strike the trapped attackers from various sides, using the advantage of the high ground. The battle, of course, took a little pause, with the strange beam of light from the south of Winterhold reaching between Etherius and Nirn, but when the masters of both sides moved to battle each other, the situation turned into a slaughterhouse once again. The chasing team returned to lock the west of the battlefield, this time with 2,000 fresh cavalrymen from Solitude under the lead of High King Torg himself. Your Grace, I don't think this situation can be resolved with peace anymore. This is a killing zone. Falk Firebeard stated. I was told to handle the powerful mages, but 10 elven arch-wizards is a bit too much for even me, Sybil Stentor said, supporting Falk's opinion. Mammoths, a large army, battle formations, magic weapons, and that beam going in the sky. Was Winterhold preparing this all along? Their numbers might reach 10,000 by the looks of it, and they are not even pressured. Did they really need our help? Balgir Bearclaw, Torig's housecarl, spoke. Look, even Ulfric's Stormcloak and his goons are here, Falk added. By a smear. Torig swore in a low voice and kept thinking. Balgir, Falk, you two ride ahead with 500 each. Carry the banners of Solitude and the High King and stop all this madness. Nords killing each other for what? This is a pointless slaughter. I'll deal with Ulfric and Elenwen. The cavalrymen of Solitude broke on 3 teams each to stop a fight. The chances were slim, but the High King's banner had its value among Nords. Its weight was something unimaginable and could move all the clans, the Jorvisker, and every lawful force under the sky of Skyrim. This is what means to be the High King. On Ulfric's front, he was feeling kind of worried and kind of excited. His aim was clearer and clearer when this beam of light appeared. He always had that thing with Elenwen, like the cat and mouse, they always acted. He would chase after her head, but she would always turn the tables on him. He would vex her by killing her justiciars and pillaging their camps out of eastern Skyrim discreetly, and she would always find a way to gain something from the losses, vexing him even more. It started from the day he abandoned the life of becoming a graybeard and descended the Snowthroat to participate in the Great War. He was young and brutish, yet his voice was ever so powerful. Imprisoned during the last siege on the Imperial City, and the interrogation he went through was crucial for the fall of the city, or so he believed. This time, however, things are totally different. It started with a Nordic charge breaking down the Thalmor forces and a showdown between him and Elinwen, which almost was about to end ugly for him when the 9 arch-wizards, if not for the sudden beam of light coming from the east. Now, and for the first time, Ulfric could see Elinwen's face turning desperate. "Move." She struck her blade at him while glaring. "Ha, nice try." Ulfric laughed it off as he deflected the attack with his shield. He was enjoying every little detail of her expressions. She always looked down on him with a cold look in her eyes, but now the situation was turned around. Elinwen and her unit were trying to reach the beam of light, but Ulfric and his warband were hell-bent on not letting them leave. The sense of crisis in Elinwen's mind was very clear to Ulfric as he drove out every ounce of his focus in this fight. The Bear of Markarth showed off his power to a frightening degree, locking down an arch-wizard like Elinwen down without taking a single step back. His aura, which was akin to the power of frost similar to Alina's, was having a hint of bestial feeling to it, as if an image of a large snow bear was forming around Ulfric. His aura was manifesting itself slowly, and the bear was pouring every bit of his battle hunger on the elf in front of him, driving her back. I said move. She couldn't take it anymore either, and went full force on Ulfric. In terms of the physical ability, an Altmare woman who specialized in magic was much more vulnerable than a Nord man specializes in battle spirit, but her magic output broke since itself. A warrior is vulnerable to frost, but Ulfric's aura negated that effect, and all she could do was to either counter him with flame or lightning. Ulfric and Elinwen engrossed themselves in the fight until someone interfered. A flashy, shock beam spell was cast between Ulfric and Elinwen and went between the Stormcloaks and the Thalmor, dividing the two parties apart. Everyone looked towards the source of the beam. From a higher ground to the north, there was a hooded rider with heavy clothing and long ebony staff. From the looks of it, it was a mage as capable as Elinwen and the arch-wizards. By Talos, a monster after the next. Who are you? Why would you stop this fight? Ulfric sighed, then shouted. The riders coolly put the staff away and turned around with her horse showing no interest in reply. A second after, a band of 1,000 riders flowed from the mage's sides towards Ulfric and Elinwen carrying the banner of solitude. Tisk! Ulfric's face twisted as he looked away. High King Torrig and his men arrived between the two parties, and the cavalry of Solitude forced the Stormcloaks and the Thalmor away with force and intimidation. Gazes of contempt and hate were exchanged between the three parties. Jarl Ulfric, I think the bloodshed should end up here, don't you think? The High King crossed in front of Ulfric with his horse before turning around to him. Ulfric didn't want to reply. May I have your assistance at that? The clans will listen to you as one of this age's heroes. Please, a lot of death will be avoided. Those are some marauders, your grace. Galmar Stonefist, Ulfric's commander, stepped forward. Are they? Falk Firebeard was right in Torrig's heel. That's what they pose as. Galmar pointed at Elinwen and her Thalmor force, hiding their identities in regular brigands' armors, different from their usual elven armor and Thalmor robes. Even Elinwen and the arch-wizards were dressed in plain black robes and big hoods to hide their identities. First Ambassador, shall we stop this? High King Torrig turned to Elinwen. Humph. She only snorted and kept her face hidden under her hood. Her identity as the First Ambassador cannot be confirmed, or a real political drama will happen between the Empire and the Dominion. Her eyes, however, were focused on the fight she badly wanted to interfere with. The fight over there between the Masters of the Thalmor was tilting to the side of the Thalmor, but the Masters of Winterhold were really some relentless bunch. The thing they are trying to prevent may happen if they waited any longer. Now with not only Ulfric but now Torrig and his men, this was kinda impossible to do. She just wanted a chance to drive those men away and charge with her men towards the other Masters. Go. A voice called to her. What? Go. I'll hold them. You've got to stop the cursed child. I know what he is doing. I've seen it before. Go. Master, wait. You can't use magic right now. Your wounds are not healed yet. Too late. The 10th arch-wizard of the bunch, who was injured by Alina's eyes, seems to have gone against the odds and used magic somehow. She was now going to do something to aid her apprentice, Elenwen. But, master, not buts. Through the north. Now. Elenwen moved by instincts and headed to the north. On the south near the foothills of Mount Anther, an avalanche started to occur. What? Stop her. Ulfric called. Wait. Torrig wanted to stop the reckless action as soon as possible. From the north, the enemies were on the run, and from the south, big masses of snow were falling from the mountain. Damn it! Fussaroda. Ulfric could only shout at the avalanche to slow its unnatural charge down. Elenwen and her men used every ounce of their magicka to speed up their run and ran as fast as horses toward the top-tier battle at the foot of the mountain to the east, yet something unexpected occurred. A large shadow descended from the mountain and joined the battle. The large creature was something only spoken of in the legends of the Alliance War, and by the ones who were lucky enough to survive a very scary trip through the Daedric plain of Cold Harbor. The High Elven Arch-wizards all retreated away from the foul creature, while it seemed to be protecting the masters of Winterhold or Alina to be specific. Elenwen and her men could only halt their steps in awe of the mighty aura that being gave off. Something like that was really a hurdle to fight. It suddenly opened its mouth, spat someone out, and spoke some words, then attacked the 9 arch-wizards with a blue fire breath. "This is a dragon?" one of the men asked. "No. It is just a Daedric imitation of one. Not even an arch-wizard can conjure something that size." Elenwen was impressed. "You are not getting anywhere." Suddenly, and from the side, a shadow leaped towards Elenwen. "Damn you!" Frustrated, Elenwen engaged in another fight with a single mage. It was Sybil Stentor, the mage who stopped the fight of the Thalmor and the Stormcloaks. "You go." Elenwen shouted at her lieutenants, and they charged ahead as a force of 2,000 Thalmor warriors and battle mages. The fight was heating and chaos spread all at once. Even the Tower of Music started playing a new tone. It was a strange and untimely calm music. Got OSD, Light of the Seven. Haha, this thing is good. Ulfric took a strange liking to the music. He felt his energy and blood stabilize at a rapid pace while the enemies started to fall into worry. This was the magical tonal effect of the piece. He gathered his strength into another shout, and his voice echoed. Izslian nos. Ice, flesh, statue. The ice form. Shout was directed at the avalanche and the arch-wizard creating it. It was as if an opposite rising avalanche faced a falling one, and the rising took over the other one. The arch-wizard on the foothills of Mount Anther wasn't even ready or able to cast any sort of protection. Die! Ulfric focused his aura on his legs and leaped in the air almost 50 meters, then waved his axe at the arch-wizard's neck, beheading her. The first to fall in from the ranks of the masters was none other than the 500-years-old master of Elenwen. New. Elenwen's voice echoed as high as Ulfric's shout, seeing the head of her master roll down. Ulfric held the head up from its hair and raised up for his men to see. He then pointed with the axe towards the charging elves. Sons and daughters of Skyrim, defend the land of Iskermore, defend Sarthal, defend your brother John Dare. For Skyrim, for Sovngarde. Eowa. Oh! Everyone roared after Ulfric. He used his willpower and shouted a hearty and Nordic battle cry. Every one of his men, and even Torrig's people, were hyped by its effect. On top of that, the Tower of Music's tones were rising and lowering with Ulfric's actions, leading the atmosphere to all gather around him. On the other side, the arch-wizards of the Thalmor were fighting as one, creating a massive magic array to annihilate their opponents in one go. Their only hope was for the reinforcement of the 2,000 to arrive soon enough. Sadly, Ulfric and his men were on their heels. Just 1 second. 1 second was enough to finish this all. The music reached its climax with the battle, and no one could ever tell how will this end. Everyone's blood was boiling. Everyone was ready to draw blood. Chaos was ready to take grasp of the situation as the music Suddenly, it happened. The beam of light intensified and turned as red as John's tyrant aura. A suffocating feeling as if time stopped, but everyone was conscious of it, and all looked around to see how the beam of red light enveloped everything in one go. And the light exploded. And there was no beam. Only a sky turning from dark to red and a man descending from heaven. The arch-wizards looked at him and recognized him. At him shoot. With a whisper of one of them, the large array spell that was directed at the large Daedric Titan and the Masters of Winterhold was directed at the flying man. A large destructive spell of pure energy hurled to where he is, but it passed him, or rather, he wasn't there anymore. They all sensed the crisis. Where? They looked all around them, but nowhere he was seen. An instant later, a large, handsome young man, with blue eyes and long red hair reaching to his knees, was standing between them. He had a wide smile on his face as his fist was striking down the ground. Cliffhanger. Chapter 394, Battle End 1, Blade of Slaughter. Bonus chapter before the reset comes to you by Derek Palm. A strong shockwave formed from just one single punch on the ground. The arch-wizard were scattered in every direction right away and lost the advantage of forming an array. Still, none of them were badly injured thanks to the top-tier treasures and artifacts they have on them, as well as their long years of experience in battle. Still, as far as they could tell when they looked at John, this is something out of the ordinary. The cloud of dust and snow settled as a large crack appeared on the ground with John standing in the middle. His appearance reflected a great deal of the experience he has been through. He was only in a large armored girdle covering his waist as if he is one of those warrior heroes of old. The feeling around him was mystic and profound to the extreme, and he had a sure grip of the power in his hands. He looked at everything once at the same time, and all fell in awe for the unfathomable depth they saw in his eyes. Every bit of energy settled down as if a large sea of calm, unmoving water. That was simply no longer a mortal. The ones who realized it all were the arch-wizards. They saw it before not too far from Winterhold. 200 miles and years ago to the east of Winterhold, there lies the kingdom of Morrowind beyond the Velothai Mountains. Those arch-wizards were once envoys to such a place where 3 living god kings ruled over the kingdom along with its legitimate mortal rulers. These were the Almsi-6, Almalexia, Vivek, and Sothasil. Just now, Johnhild Firemane, known to them as the cursed child of imminent disaster, was giving off the same power those living gods gave off back when they were still alive. In those days, those 3 were the mightiest force on Tamriel as they attained divinity with the disappearance of the Dwemer from year 1E 700, till 3 times 10 to the power of 427, which is almost 3,500 years. The how, in the minds of those arch-wizard, was explained on a rapid pace when they saw what was in John's hands. His right arm was clad in a bright gauntlet made of a hefty piece of dwarven metal, holding a short hammer and a blue crystal blade fixed on the gauntlet. The appearance of those artifacts spoke of their identity right away. The tools of Kagranak, which Wraithguard, the gauntlet, Sunder, the hammer, and Keening, the dagger. The appearance of those 3 relics struck deep in the hearts of the arch-wizards, almost causing their blood to flow backward. 3 Elder Scrolls and the tools of Kagranak. Just what on Nirn did fate hide more in the path of John Dare? This was not important for now. The main character of this battle is here. Someone has to stop him, and someone has to relay a message to the whole Aldmeri Dominion. This human has to be stopped by any means possible, even if the elven ancestors themselves were to be called back. Lanner, head back on your own with Elenwen. You too must survive. The oldest arch-wizard whispered to one of his colleagues before walking forward. I assume you are John Dare. He spoke to John eye to eye. John's deep eyes moved towards the arch-wizard slowly, and the elements of nature were all directed to the man. Gasps escaped everyone's mouths. This power was too wild for something like the world itself to react with John's power. John opened his mouth and spoke slowly. Fight or die. With those words, John waved his hand quite slowly, but Sunder was launched like a cannonball towards the old arch-wizard. In an instant, the hammer took the arch-wizard and crushed back at the ground almost 200 meters away from the old man's first location. Through those 200 meters, the old arch-wizard seemed to have lost limbs and pieces of his body before crushing down by the force of the hammer. Was there a chance of survival? Of course not. This was an overkill. John opened his palm open and Sunder flew back to him. Fight or die. The High Elves couldn't recover from the shock they fell to, and so no one else. Other than the 9 arch-wizard, or rather the 8, none of the ones around have ever met a demigod before. The deep look in John's eyes was now understood. He was in a highly focused state of battle craziness. He wanted them to fight him. If not, they'd die. In the end, there was no leeway out of this. He looked at them for a few seconds, seeing how they are all frozen and his face twisted in anger. Come. A shout from him made them all wake up from their frozen state. Battle me. Then he stepped forward. You think it is honorable ganging up against one the weak to rob them as you see fit? Yes, it is not a shameful act. The strong prey on the weak. I don't hate you for it. But what I hate is that how you bunch got cold feet after being bested. At least you fought the odds just a while ago, but now what? Think you being scared will spare your lives? Everyone has the right to fight and battle no matter the enemy, and now your enemy is me. You have no right to freeze still. You have no right to remain silent. Fight me. John was not giving them a leeway, that's true, but he was giving them enough courtesy and respect to fight back or die with dignity, even if they are Thalmor. Seeing the leader of their enemies pumping up their spirits to fight him, such a thing was unheard of. Run? How could they? He will kill them either way. Fight. Then die. What on earth was that logic? Still, it was really simple. Death is imminent. Either die with honor or die without it. And if they lived, it would mean they earned their lives back. A simple choice indeed. The ones who understood that were not the long-living arch-wizards, but rather the Thalmor soldiers. No matter the contempt they held towards humans, there is possible and impossible. There is strong and weak. When the odds are impossible and the enemy is strong, wasn't honor the least thing they could win? With a deep breath, a Thalmor justiciar pointed his sword at the approaching John. He is the enemy commander. Kill him and bring glory to our. He paused his words, understanding the political weight of them, to our ancestors. Forward. What is left of the Thalmor force of 2,000 high elf warrior and arch-wizard all marched as one towards John, and John walked towards them. As he saw their response, he smiled wide and praised them in his heart. Thalmor they may be, but they knew that their life is not how they lived, but how they died. He took the tools of Kagranak and off in the cube, and seemed to be going to fight them with his bare hands. He flexed his fingers and shoulders as he and the elves charged at each other. Then another change happened. The ends of his fingers started to grow as claws, his eye pupils turned into slits, and his teeth grew larger fangs. On his head, unnoticeable because of his hair, 2 feline ears formed. He jumped high and clashed with the Thalmor 2,000, cutting and slashing with his claws as lines of red blood splattered to the sky. John stood at the other side with every inch of his body covered in red blood. Even though they were golden, their blood was still red, not different than any man. John's bestial transformation ended when a black cat walked out of his shadow. She transformed into a slim teenage girl in a black dress, then her figure disappeared from its place and appeared on the other side of the Thalmor arch-wizards. The fight just a second ago was so fast for anyone to comprehend. 2,000 soldiers died in 1 minute. Each step John took during the fight was akin to 100 meters on its own, and each wave of his hands killed too many. With John at the front and Nefertiti at the back, it would take the Thalmor arch-wizards a tough fight to break from hearing. John Dare, you bite more than what you can chew. We are arch-wizards, and we have our positions. Even if you are a demigod now, you are not a match for the Dominion, and you can't hold us down here all by yourself. An arch-wizard shouted with a hysterical tone. Really? John tilted his head. With that word, two more figures appeared on the open flanks to the arch-wizards. Zykel was blocking one side and Odakuro appeared on another. Similar to John's and Nefertiti's change, Odakuro seemed to have also transformed into some hint of a golden skeleton with ebony gear and an angry masked kabuto of a wrathful Oni. 8 arch-wizards, which represented the power and the might of the war machine known as the Aldmeri Dominion and were parts of the ruling faction of Alinar, are now being put to the blade in Skyrim by an 18-years-old Nord. This won't end well for you, Nord. The Main will hear about this, the Sylvanar will hear about this, and most certainly Her Majesty the Queen of Alinar, the Overlord of the Aldmeri Dominion, will hear about this. The arch-wizard kept howling his lungs out. Good, John replied. So let this serve as a warning to whoever dares. John raised his hands towards the arch-wizard, and the world obeyed. The elf shivered in his place and started groaning without uttering a scream. His limbs were twisting, his bones were breaking. Everything went into the wrong direction inside his body. John hated arrogance except for his own. The elf was twisting while being maintained alive for his grave sin of speaking out of order. He was no longer recognizable and an elf being. His body became a mess as a mass of twisting and twirling flesh as his bones were all ground over while being kept alive to the best of John's ability. The current living mass of mess was pressured to the extreme and reduced to the least of all forms. John released his powers and left the tiny remnant of the elf to fall down on the white snow as a drop of blood. The other 7 arch-wizards kept looking at the weird phenomenon in silence, knowing that this bloodthirsty demon is no longer showing any face to a title or a crown. Even the High King didn't utter a word to stop the bloodshed when John appeared, so who may speak. The end of the arch-wizard just now was brutal, and the magic itself was disobeying them whenever they tried to make any move not from suppression, but from their broken wills. Now, I offer you the same, fight or die. Chapter 395, Battle End 2, Blade of Mercy. 7 corpses fell around John in less than a minute. There was no much resistance offered. The first tried to assassinate John from the side, but just kicked him back towards Odakuro, who raised its ebony katana and slashed one time at the elf, who split in half. The second tried to launch a strong forbidden spell towards the ones behind John, so that John gets forced to defend them, but Nefertiti beheaded the insolent fool. The third and the fourth formed a dual spell to use illusions and escape, but Zykel blew fire breath, didn't spare a clone or an original, and John killed the 2 mages by making the magicka explode in their hearts. The 5th mage was launching about to teleport away, yet John only stretched his hand and pulled back the mage through space from where he teleported to impale him with a spear from the ground. The 6th mage was clever and summoned mighty-looking frost atronax and hid within them, but Odakuro's katana found its way to his heart. The last and the 7th arch-wizard was a close combat mage who tried his best to attack Nefertiti only for her to punch his guts, and for Zykel to wave its mace-like tail at him, sending him towards Odakuro, which stepped on the arch-wizard, making him kneel down and executed him with the katana. That was simply the fight. No wasting time or anything. Each arch-wizard couldn't last a single exchange. The power of the demigod was a world apart from the arch-wizard. One must take note that in between the demigod realm and the arch-wizard realm there is a realm known as the ancestor realm. The ancestors is not an official rank like the arch-wizard, which is the apex of the arcane arts. Ancestors can be warriors or anything, and can even be more powerful than some demigods. All in all, ancestors are the most powerful existences a mortal can be, and their ages are mostly over 1,000 years old. Divaith Fyr and his clone daughters are all ancestors, and so is Lord Harkon of the Fokihar clan. No mundane force can order the ancestors around, and the ancestors are always uninterested in the world of mortals, spending their lives in seclusion to find ways to attain divinity. In the end, no matter how the Thalmor in front of John tried, they were too outranked in every term or advantage. 5 minutes from John's appearance has passed, and the whole Thalmor force, save for Elenwen, was completely annihilated. John looked at Elinwen and spoke words inaudible to any other but her. She, who has fallen on her knees since her force was all gone and lost all hope, stood back up again and teleported away. John didn't even stop her. John's eyes then landed on his family, starting from Nurina, Hilda, Alina, Jonrad, Tormund, Jenna, and Sigurd. Alina smiled at him and walked closer. "You are in one bloody mess," she said. "What's wrong with that?" John laughed. "I came to this world screaming and covered in someone else's blood. I intend to keep doing so from now on." "Boy, you are sick." Jonrad couldn't help but complain. "I am not sick, I am twisted. Sick makes it sound like there is a cure." The light exchange didn't fit the bloody scene around them, and even John wasn't really free to waste time. He looked ahead and his eyes landed on the remaining heads of the clans and their men as they all threw their weapons to the ground. They almost lost about half their armies, and it seemed that even Brahm of Johanna has managed to capture Orga Stormfist and threw her among the others who surrendered. John walked beside Brahm and patted his shoulder, then looked to the side and saw his cousin Hafthor riding a mammoth who seemed to have gone through a tough fight. Zykel flew and landed right beside John, so the latter jumped on him to find Nefertiti already atop of the Daedric Titan. Odakuro followed on foot, and the four mighty beings stood over the captured clan heads and their men. The air around the four gave a strong vibe, but John was the center of the power, and his image was godly even when he fought the elves and covered himself with their blood in a fit of madness. In the heads of those Nords, his image formed a certain mad warrior who would cover himself in his enemy's blood as he would tear through the hordes of elves. Those Nords, who would never kneel to a Jarl, king, or emperor, knelt down to John, uttering the name that came to their minds. "Shor, Shor, hail Shor." In their heads, John was Shor, the chief god of their pantheon and the owner of Sovngarde. John's face was expressionless and indifferent in the past 5 minutes, but it suddenly twisted and turned into absolute anger. "You bastard! How dare you profane that honorable name?" John's anger was genuine. Not even his family saw him this angry before, as this was true wrath. He even waved his hand, and a mighty force formed beside those Nords, slapping them all at the same time. Odakuro, the manifestation of wrath, and his soul fragment grew in size an extra meter and shouted to the heavens with the anger of its master. It was about to go and kill all those insolent and ignorant Nords who used a name very sacred in John's book, but John held wrath down. The clan's head and warriors realized their mistake and stood back up slowly, yet their heads were just looking down and couldn't help to raise it up against that pressure. John took a deep breath and spoke. "Son of Jonrad and Hilda the Bloody, with a mane of fire you'd know me, and ours the wrathful if you dare me, and ours the sharper if you duel me. And in Sarthal we are the mighty, and in Skyrim no soul to hold me. O people of the clans! O people of the schemes and plans! I, John Hild of Clan Firemane, greet you with blades and shackles." John's voice echoed through the land, from the attacking clans to the defender forces, from Ulfric to Torrig, from the living to the dead. John's greeted the people with the tone of the victor, but no response was uttered. John's glare burned them all and made the process breathing so hard. The one who was enraged as much as John was Alina. "The Victor Lord is greeting you, and you don't respond. By kine, I'd teach you all your place like how the horses are tamed." Alina shouted. Those who were utterly silent loosened their tongues right away. "The Knicker clan greets Lord John Hild. We, the Thornshield clan, greet the noble one John Hild Firemane. The Stormfists of Whiterun greet John Dare. The Krogger clan greets the Thane of Winterhold." Each clan spoke in line, one after the other, until all the 9 clans greeted back. John's death glare went away as soon as the clans responded. "O people of the clans! I, who bear the lives of people on my shoulders, carry 2 blades, a blade of mercy and a blade of slaughter. As for the blade of mercy, it has fallen from me on the road, so I lost it. As for the blade of slaughter, then here it is." John took out a blood skull. The people shivered at the sight of the blood-red sword. O people of the clans, I carry the evil deed with its burden and pay for it back with its equal, and I see the eyes of blunt greed and the necks of false pride among you. And I see heads that ripened. For it's time they are culled, and it's my right. And as if I can now see the blood flow between your fallen helms and your drenched beards. I, O people of the clans whose metal is schism and hypocrisy and degeneration, have learned through experience and saw the ultimate purpose as destiny spread its quiver and searched its arrows to find me the hardest and the gravest, so it shot me at you. Because you have fallen to temptation, delusions, and followed the ways of falsehood, to the point that you marched with the Altmare to the sacred lands of Sarthal, wishing to join hands with them, and set it aflame like how the Falmer did with Sarthal of Iskramor. By the high heavens, I would grind you for that, how the stones of the quarry are ground and trample over you, how the disobedient beasts are trampled over, and I would educate you with the sword, leaving the women widowed and children orphaned. And I swear on everything that is sacred in Daedric that I never drop a promise, or let go of a word. John came to a halt as he looked down on those men who stood like the broken trees. This was the weight of the truth and the triumph of justice. No falsehood was in John's words regarding any of those dark clans' actions. Death was lurking towards their necks with merely some words said by a youth. From the beginning till now, they died from inside a dozen times each already. Some cried from the shame, and some cried from the unwillingness to be slaughtered like sheep, while the most kept their head low. O people of the clans, as for the blade of slaughter, then I'll drop it on those battlements, for it's only to defend what is dear. John turned around and tossed Bloodskull high in the air as it landed on the gatehouse of Sarthal to stick itself in the wall, carrying a strong hint of John's godly powers. John turned around with a meaningful look in his eyes, asking one last question. O people of the clans, what say you I do with you? John's words were unexpected. They left a strange impression on everyone who heard them. None expected those words from any side. He is the victor and the ultimate one at that. Even with the High King present, he can't deny John how to deal with his captives unless a ransom is paid. What kind of situation was that? Was he mocking the loser, asking him to decide their own fate? That's not how things went. Still, there was a smart girl who looked up to John and replied to him after studying his eyes. Do us good, Orga Stormfist shouted. Everyone looked at her, not expecting her blunt reply. John looked at Orga with narrowed eyes. She looked at him back with confidence. Do us good. You are a good man, from a line of good men. Orga's words were so natural, and the look in her eyes was confident. It is as if she found out what and who is John just by seeing him up close. It was a scary ability that made Orga a terrifying judge of characters. Contrary to everyone's expectations, and as Orga expected, John smiled casually. Then go, he said. Say for the clan's leaders, you're free. Chapter 396, Aftermath. Opening his eyes to the bright light coming through the clouds, John rose to sit up. He was surrounded by three beautiful girls who seemed to have fallen into a deep slumber after last night's experience. A day has passed since the Battle of Winterhold, and John has officially told everyone to screw off before heading home to his house with Ela and Alina. Then he picked up Jellinar and teleported to a nameless snowy island not far in the Sea of Ghosts. Then he released all of his divine power on that island, rending himself back to mortality and returning to his natural self. The state of immortality he was in was dangerous and couldn't be maintained, as he was borrowing an immense power from a large number of heart stones using the tool of Kagranak. If things went wrong, his body would have been disintegrated from the massive power he held. After all, one heart stone can fully resurrect a mortal if all the dangerous side effects were overlooked. Also, becoming a demi-Ada was too much for a mortal like John to handle. By all means, he wasn't ready or even strong enough. To gloss over the boring details of how the process happened, one must know that the original spirits, Eta, are those of the Ada race who possess divine powers. Demi-Ada, are also immortals and divine, but far less powerful than a regular Ada or an almighty Etiada, original spirit. Still, just like the normal Ada, a demi-Ada is possible to emerge by performing one of the 6 walking ways, not fully as the Ada can't exist physically in Mundus. The 6 walking ways are the Prolix Towers, the Sigic Endeavor, the Song Rewriting, the Man-Telling, Chim, and transforming the Scarab into a new man. The Prolix Towers are those towers that define the reality of the Mundus, which were used by their builders to utilize the powers of the Orbis and mimic the one true tower. Known towers are the White Gold, Green Sap, Snowthroat, Red Mountain, Walkbrass, Crystal-like Law, Orichalc, and Adamantia. The Sigic Endeavor is the way of Saint Velith, who showed the Chimer how to ascend to immortality by the help of Bothia and Mephala, who denied the falsehoods that the elven ancestor champion, Trinimac, said about Lorcan. The Sigic Endeavor is to process of apotheosis by manipulating time itself. The goal of the endeavor is to experience Chim, and the two concepts are closely related. The song rewriting is the process of rewriting reality by the tonal manipulation, which happened with the case of the Dwemer when Lord Kagranak tried to activate the Numidium and ended up wiping out his race. The Man-Telling is the way of the dead, which is to follow the steps of a certain Ada to the point of completely mimicking the Ada and becoming him or her. The same way Talos mantled Lorcan by leading his armies to fight the elves, and how the hero of Kvatch mantled Sheogorath. The Chim is one of the ultimate goals of apotheosis, and by its literal meaning is royalty. It is a state of being which allows for escaping from all known laws and limitations and reaching some sort of realization about the nature of the universe and one's place in it, leading to a simultaneous comprehension of the full scope of existence as well as one's own individuality. The scarab that transforms into the new man is an obscure term, but the new man means a new dreamer may mean the possibility of a birth of a new world altogether through ascending beyond the Godhead and becoming an amaranth. These were the secrets that were opened up to John through his 10 minutes experience, a state of divinity. So which way did John use to reach that state? John's inner self was in a state of conflict about it. He is an avid fan of the Sigic Endeavor, and his meditation is being refined based on the ancient texts he found about the Endeavor, and that's how he absorbed the powers of the Heart Stones. He also used the tonal artifacts, which are the tools of Kagranak, to manipulate the energy and absorb it. He never reached the Chim and kept himself away from the tower, not even willing to check it out ever again. By that, he could conclude relying only on one way is not enough to reach the true level of an immortal Ada. Well, at least I've done put my all to it. John smiled as he looked at the place around him with content feeling. This island he was in is supposed to be some snowy place in the Sea of Ghosts, but for some reason, it was now some sort of summer rainforest jungle. John loved the atmosphere, which seemed to be giving him life and recharging his energy just by being in this beautiful place. He put his hand on a tree, and branch lowered itself for John to hang on it and go up the level of the trees. The view from above was to a large landscape of an island covered with all sorts of tropical greenery and beaches of white sand and crystal blue waters. All of that was veiled by a cloud of mist isolating the tropical island and its beach from the cold outside of the Sea of Ghosts. This was John's domain, which he used up all the excessive divine orbic power he had to create, the power to shape the world. In the center of the island, there was a clearing of a large patch of green land surrounding a single pavilion in the center of a lake. The pavilion was made wooden pillars and a circular stone roof that seemed a bit stylish for the crude Nordic architecture, as in truth, John shamelessly used the elven architecture with this pavilion, which would suit the summer atmosphere in the area. He smiled with pride at his work and jumped down the tree. The sudden noise made the 3 sleeping beauties wake up. John simply walked to them and picked Jelena up in his arms. "What's up, princess?" "What's up? My body is barely keeping up with you." She surrendered herself to him as they engrossed themselves in a kiss. "Hey, kiss me too." "And me too." Ela and Alina jumped on John to join the fray. He laughed because of their action and held them all with his hands. "Last night didn't put the 3 of you down? Seems like you 3 weren't wasting time on training while I was gone." The four kept playing and having fun until they reached the clearing where the pavilion stood. John carried both Ela and Jelinar as he walked on water by magic, and Alina followed him with the same spell until they reached the pavilion. "There is a mass of work waiting for us in Winterhold. You sure left them with one mess on their own," Alina said as they reached the pavilion. John put down the girls and let out a sigh. "I just don't want to go to Winterhold anytime soon. Wolfer and the boys can deal with the aftermath on their own." John said, "There is no leeway out of this one. You are the boss and there are things only you can do." Ela said, "Don't forget that you almost let the King Torrig and Jarl Ulfric share a room." Jelinar pointed out something really weird. John looked away immediately. "And how in the blazes should I deal with two VIP coming to Winterhold at the same time without further notice? We only have one VIP guest house, so they've got to share." "Kind's mercy. Let's go home." Alina swore and placed her hand on a central pedestal on the pavilion. The space behind the pedestal twisted, and the space opened up a portal leading to Winterhold. Winterhold and Sarthel were calmer than what was anticipated. Crowded by the sudden arrival of many moonblades and firemans, the cities were even more cramped up with the unforeseen reinforcements from Windhelm and Solitude. Busy with licking their own wounds, the Dare troopers had a hard time putting down brawls between the soldiers of Windhelm and Solitude nearly around every corner. One can imagine how the political scene was from just the state of the common soldiers. In Winterhold below John's manor, the space twisted and a portal opened with four figures walking out of it. "It is cold here. I really feel so damn tired every time it is cold like this," John complained. "And you call yourself a Nord?" Ela said. "I just function much better in a warmer climate." "I guess we all can agree to that," Jelinar said. "I like that thought. Keep it up." John rubbed her hair jokingly. The four walked out of the basement to the first floor of the manor to meet many anxious faces looking at John all at once. "What's wrong?" John asked. These people were mostly the employees of the company. "Boss, here you are at long last. The place is a hot mess," Sev the secretary said. "Oh, good. I hope your workload is not overpiling." "It is, boss. And you have too many requests for appointments. The only way to solve them is to put appointments within other appointments within more appointments." "Now that's scary." John started thinking, but no idea came to mind. "Fine, I'll deal with them all. Who's on top of the list?" "The High King, damn. Never thought I would ever say that." "Focus, Sev." "Yes, boss. The High King and his men, Jarl Ulfric Stormcloak, Jarl Career, Miss Vittoria Vici, the Imperial commander from Fort Castav, and a wizard from the Imperial Synod. There are also many social visits. Be a good girl and put it all in one meeting," John said. "Excuse me. Just tell Jarl Career to make one big meeting. I am expecting to have one big mess. Also, the social visits are only family, so leave it to the night and make the boys and girls clean the place here and kick some family party. I want to drink and pass out with everyone tonight." "Yes, boss." Sev became gloomy as she realized the amount of work waiting for her. "Good luck, Sev. You'll need it," Ela said as she went away. "You are the secret paperwork wife, Sev. No one will ever replace you," Jelinar said and disappeared. "I approve and recognize your efforts, Sev," Alina said haughty and went inside. "Well, that was mean." John patted the back of the crying Sev. In the longhouse of Jarl Career, many political figures gathered around the long fireplace. Jarl Career accepted John's request to invite every one of those figures to his place. John was the latest to arrive, accompanied by Tormund Firemane, Sigurd Moonblade, and Alina. The room became silent as everyone sat their eyes on John. He was wearing his regular mage that gave off his official rank as an expert mage. He wasn't carrying any sword or wearing any armor, but the power of John Dare was well recognized among everyone in this room. The mages around the room were the first to sense it, as well as the experienced warriors like Jarl Ulfric. John wasn't the same as he was yesterday. Not sure how they should think. John from the day of the battle was a powerful demigod, but this young man is not that tyrant of yesterday. Surely his aura carried a strong pressure of tyranny that was actually so strong compared to anyone else in the room, but that was not what they expected. Those with knowledge could tell it right away. The power of yesterday was unnatural and temporary, and judging by John's look, he is in a very good state. Maybe the godly power was temporary, but with the tools of Kagranak, which are known to be in John's possession by now, John may be able to switch that godly mode back on again, which is not too far from the truth. It is rumored that when Almalexia fell from divinity by losing her demigod powers, she went mad. Can John Hild Firemane actually be able to ignore this effect? A mage asked another in the corner. Don't ask me. There is more we don't know here, but the situation is much better like this. We can pressure those Nords now. The two mages were from Cyrodiil and traveled a long distance in one night after an emergency transmission came from the Imperial Embassy in Skyrim. This was how fast the response of the Empire to the emergence of a demigod is. Ulfric Stormcloak was not far from the two mages, and he glared at them with a killing intent, causing them to look back at him with hostility. He walked towards them and passed from between them, showing his dominance over weasels of their kind. As he passed them, he walked straight to John. Here he is, Winterhold's hero. It is good to finally meet you in person once again. Ulfric stood in front of John and offered a handshake. John smiled and shook Ulfric's hand. Likewise, Jarl Ulfric. Despite Ulfric distancing himself from John on a personal scale and John calling Ulfric as Big Bad Ulfric, the two seem to have a great deal of respect to one another as well as plans for each other. High King Torygg saw the scene from a distance and narrowed his eyes. Both men are heroic and domineering, making him feel like the fool on the throne. Yet he knew better. There are the ones who would evade the storm, and ones who would sail through it. Torygg would evade, Ulfric would sail through, but John. It is time for John to announce his stance today. This meeting was the most important meeting before the future events. It is time for John dare answer many things and to take a side. Chapter 397, Political Drama 1. Judgment. All seated, all offered drinks, all looked at each other weighting gains and losses. John was at the center of all seated, closest to the High King on the right row of seats. The king, of course, sat on the throne of the Jarl, and the outsider Imperials were seated on the left row of seats according to protocol. Jarl Career chose to stand beside the High King to answer all questions regarding the hold. Second Thane Alina was seated beside First Thane John Hild. Following her were the two great patriarchs, Tormund Firemane and Sigurd Moonblade. Jarl Ulfric Stormcloak remained at the other side of the hall, as an outsider standing in the shadow of a corner eyeing everything. He may grumble whenever he sees Torygg, but he wasn't looking to anyone other than John with complete focus and interest, giving John a series of goosebumps every now and then. John and Alina were like the most brilliant pair. John, who healed himself right away after gaining divine powers, was now back to his previous self, but his hair has grown a lot, reaching his back. He didn't even bother with it, as he gave it a style of Nordic braids and was done with it. His only regret was not growing a glorious beard to complete the look. Alina, on the other hand, was radiating in her classy dresses and noble aura, capturing the eyes of the Imperials, who were in a dilemma between Alina's radiance and John's glares. First and foremost, thank you all for attending the meeting today. The past few days were hard on everyone here, so I hope most of you have taken your rest for a long meeting. King Torygg said. Everyone else smiled calmly and nodded. Before we start, I think we have some high-value prisoners we need to deal with. Thane John Hild, I think these people are your prisoners to deal with. Can you please take things from here? Yes, your grace. John stood up and turned to his housecarl, Trudvar. Bring them in. Trudvar led some hold guards to the outside of the great hall and returned a minute later with 9 men and women. They looked dignified but a bit broken. They were the 9 leaders of the 9 clans forming the Dragon Hun Alliance. I presume that you lot have picked a speaker for yourselves, John said. Yes, Thane John Hild. I will be the speaker. The one who replied was Orga Stormfist. Undoubtedly, She is the most glib-tongued person among the lot. And you are? High King Torrig asked. Matriarch of the Stormfist clan, Orga Stormfist, also known as the leader of the Stormfist Brigade, Orga the Younger. I feel like I heard some of those names before, John wondered. Orga Stormfist is a legendary leader who founded the Stormfist clan thousands of years ago. The clan fell from glory nearly 950 years ago when they sided with Fildgor Strongprince, brother to Jorn the Skald King, and formed the Stormfist Brigade to launch a civil war over the rule of Eastern Skyrim, Alina said. Oh, I see. John nodded and turned around. So, Orga Stormfist, you are a well-known mercenary according to my buddy Brom of Johanna. What exactly brought you down with the others to this so-called Dragon Hunt Alliance? Also, who came up with the name? The reason for the alliance was the subjugation of an enemy clan gaining too much power. 17 years ago, 11 clans have gathered up for the same purpose and broke their alliance thinking they have fulfilled their goals. 2 weeks ago, messengers arrived at each clan with the news of the survival of John Hild Firemane, who is now known as John Dare, Thane of Winterhold. With the demise of 2 of the 11 clans, the Bloodsails and the Blackbone, the rest of the 9 decided to face the threat in one swoop disguised as a bandit raid. And the Dragon Hunt Alliance was just a name brought by some drunken soldiers when Thane John Hild was called the Young Dragon of Winterhold by Jarl Ulfric Stormcloak. Oh, I am so flattered. John's expressions turned bright right away. The people were in loss of words how this guy kept acting childishly. So, you said there were messengers arriving from some sort of source? Who exactly were they? John asked. This question was really scary. Some of the Imperial diplomats were on their toes once John asked such a question. John's eyes scanned them one after the other, as he could tell that some of them were surely political allies with the Thalmor. The letters came from an anonymous source, but the elders of the clans could trace them back to Clan Fokihar, one of the darkest clans of Skyrim. Fokihar. Some Nords shivered for the word, and clearly, the High King and his men were well aware of the name. Your Grace, can we please get an elaboration of who are those Fokihar folk? The Imperial Legate of Fort Castav, Sulla Trebatius. As you have heard, they are the darkest of the Nord clans, and they a true hidden clan. One that has severed contacts with the world hundreds of years ago, but they are very infamous and vile. They are vampires. Falk Firebeard said. Then why the vigilance of Stinder are not taking action against them? The Legate asked. What part of the true hidden clan don't you understand? Fox said with annoyance. Don't give me that crap. All of your clans are called hidden clans, and a bunch of them are in front of us here. The clans call themselves hidden because they do not follow the doctrine of the Empire. Some worship the ancient Nordic pantheon. Some worship the Nordic pantheon and some worship the Daedra, and that's why they stay hidden from Imperial cult. The ones who worship the Daedra are considered enemies to the rest of the world, and that includes the other clans of Nords, while ours keep contact with the world. Alina explained with a level-headed tone. So those Fokihars can't be found? Just like that? The last known appearance of them was recorded in the Reach area about 10 days ago when they clashed with the Firemans and kidnapped Mr. John Hild Firemane over here. He is the last known man who came into contact with them. Suddenly, one of the Imperial mages spoke up. John narrowed his eyes. As he thought, a superpower like the Empire is not to be underestimated, and they have eyes on everything. True, John casually replied. Then you could have said something from a while ago. The Imperial legate stood up to face John with a frown. Come on, Sulla. We can take this outside after this meeting is over. John replied to the Imperial legate mockingly. John Dare, this is official business, so you better not obstruct us. Interesting. You lot have a lot of balls as it seems. Wanna try? Don't tempt me, Imperial. I may not be as powerful as I was yesterday, but I am still John Dare. You and I go way back, so you better keep it zipped. John and Sulla Trebatius, the legate of Fort Castav, were at odds with each other for a very long time, ever since the founding of the Dare Dragon Company. Legate Sulla tried too many times to extort money from John, but the latter was as shrewd as a Breton and as calculative as Imperials. The provisions of Fort Castav tribute on Winterhold haven't increased a single grain of salt ever since the days before John's arrival to Winterhold. Moreover, John has completely cut Sulla's feet from Winterhold and stopped many unauthorized excavations Sulla ordered around the hold. John was actually very aware of Sulla's identity as a character from the game. By 4E201, this man will desert from the Legion and become an explorer reaching very deep in the Dwemer ruins of Alftand, only at the doorsteps of the legendary city of Blackreach. Now as John was aware of Sulla's intentions, he wouldn't let him out of his post to stuck his nose where it doesn't belong. This was why Winterhold and the Imperial Legion of Fort Castav were always at odds. This isn't over, John Dare? It is. You just don't realize it yet. John was truly amused by the amount of the enemies he makes wherever he goes. The curse of the protagonist is truly marvelous. Thane Johnhild, you were the last to come across those vampires. Some of the righteous clans like the Skyguard clan and the Goldfair clan has a deep grudge with the Fokihar clan. Do you have anything that can help us with the case of the Fokihar clan? High King Torrig smoothened the atmosphere. Well, I was imprisoned by the Fokihar clan for quite some time. Nothing I'd wish to relive ever again. If you want to know the location of their castle, then I'd say it is really hard to tell, but as soon as I escaped their fort after employing their inner political strife to my favor, I found myself in a Daedric realm called Called Harbor. By the 8. Called Harbor. It can't be. Gods, this is serious. Everyone in the room reacted with a pale face. Of course, this was no small matter. How in oblivion did you escape that? Sybil Stentor asked. As most of you know about the damned prophecy that links me to 3 Elder Scroll, the head of the Fokihar clan known as Lord Harkon wanted to find those Elder Scrolls. I led them in a few mazes to recover an Elder Scroll and, surprisingly, the Tools of Kagranak. It was then when I devised a plan by breaking free from their spells and forcing them to all travel to Called Harbor. I then used the device they used to travel between the realms to come home and sabotage it from this side, where I found myself somewhere in the Sea of Ghosts, and then used some magic to contact my adoptive mother, Archwizard Narina Aran, to pick me up. John made up some truths and had to hide up some other facts. The secrets he let out were nothing compared to his sole fragmental artifact, Pride, which he used to escape. Wait, hold up. You sabotaged an artifact that can travel between the world and escaped a vampire den just like that? An Imperial mage jumped up, not buying any part of the story. Yes, I also came across a Daedric Titan and struck a deal with him to fight for me. I think your report should contain that. Daedric Titans are the most dangerous kind of Daedric creatures ever recorded as far as you Imperials know, right? Yes, right. The Daedric Titan. There was that. The mage realized he needed to link more dots in this accident. To sum things up, the Fokihar clan comes from Oblivion, and they have the ability to travel through realms, which makes sense why no one found them for so many years. Any more questions? None for now. High King Torrig paused the hearing about John's adventures and nodded for John to continue. Now as we got the Fokihar thing out of the way, Orga Stormfist, I promised safe passage for the men of the clans, and I delivered. You heads of the clans also delivered yourselves without any trickery, so I respect that. Another question. The force of high elves that aided you. What was their identity? John's question this time was right in the heart of the problem. He could notice the Imperials taking deep breaths, ready to stop any political drama from happening. Orga Stormfist was having a hard time here, but she noticed Alina looking at her. From the way her mouth moved, Alina was saying something to Orga which the latter understood, but was about to break into laughter. Orga cleared her throat and spoke loudly. The High Elves who aided us were a group of dark mages that we hired. I see. So we can use the heads of those elves to decorate the walls of Sarthal. John concluded right away. The move was completely unexpected to the Imperial mages. They all panicked in an instant. Their main goal as diplomats dispatched by the Empire is to wrap up the mess and suppress any political uprising that may lead to any unwanted conflict. The Empire had many preparations for the Thalmor, but a conflict of that kind may cause big trouble. They came to think that John will accuse the Thalmor of being the ones who attacked him and cause a mess, but the move that John made was to provoke the Thalmor to the extreme. The diplomats were prepared to face the former anticipation by saying that John or the clan had no physical proof that the Thalmor were involved in this, yet John knew better. Law and politics was his oldest area of expertise, and he was no stranger to playing dirty. If John desecrated the corpses of the elven archwizards, it wouldn't be just a political drama, it will be a full-on tomato war. Their response should either be admitted that those elves are Thalmor, which means that the Empire will be in open conflict with the Dominion for doing a large-scale military operation without permission on its soil, or keep silent, and watch the Aldmeri Dominion go into a full-on political conflict with the Imperials acquiring new gains. John looked at the Imperial with disgusted eyes. How on Nirn can they just accept to be the ones cleaning after their enemy's mess, and even go in cahoots with them? The Empire was really rotten to the core. Such an entity as the Empire should be cleansed from top to bottom, but John had nothing to do with that right now anyway. John just looked at Orga and spoke his judgment. Well, in the end, we don't have much to do with the elves. As the aggressors, I have every right to obliterate you lot, but I chose mercy for a very good reason. You fuckers are Nords, and killing you weakens Skyrim. The High King himself has traveled many miles across the kingdom to stop the pointless bloodshed. You fuckers are the core power of Skyrim. Whenever there is war, you are the first to answer under the banner of His Grace the High King. Killing you is killing His Grace's soldiers. See where I am going there? If you lot do not have a value to Skyrim, I would have killed you off the face of Nirn. John's lecturing tone was directly targeting the people's cores. He was not angry or anything, but he wanted to make his point clear. You lot are my prisoners until each of your clans bail you out with 10,000 gold septims each, or what is its worth. Managing you will be done by Thane Alina Moonblade. John set the ransom for 10,000 gold septims. By no means that was something looked down on. John's reasoning was clear. The number of the Dare troopers who died in the battle is going to cost the company a lot, and the day is filled with funerals to the fallen troopers. John himself is going to attend a sermon for the fallen heroes in the Temple of Kine. The leaders of the clans couldn't help but nod their heads in bitterness and see themselves out to be led to their prisons once again. Now that we got this out of the way, I guess all that is left is decorating the walls with the heads of those rogue Altmere wizards, John said to provoke the Imperials. Wait, a voice called for John. I have a say in that. Thane of Winterhold. Everyone looked at the speaker for their eyes to almost drop out of their sockets. On the door leading to the great hall of Jarl Career's longhouse, 3 high elves stood. A high elf in an Imperial Legion armor and another in a bard robe. The two distanced themselves from the third, which was the one who just called for John. A female high elf in an expensive-looking Thalmor robe. It was none other than First Ambassador Elenwen. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.